Let's see. Am I okay? So sorry about that. All right, I think I am live now. Well, good to see you, everyone. Sorry for that little delay there, but it's nice to be here. Hope you all are having a beautiful Monday. Hope that you all are doing really well. This is going to be a new format for me. So what we usually do is we bring a bunch of people up on the stage, and we kind of let people all kind of talk it out with each other in one big massive panel. We're probably not going to do that today, in part because I'm not feeling super well. I'm a little bit under the weather. But if you're interested, hop up and we'll go through whatever questions you have. And I think what I'll try to do is go through conversations sort of more sequentially. So more do like 1v1s. And it doesn't have to be verses. So if you want to hop up and just talk with me about stuff that you've been thinking about theologically, that's super great too. One other caveat that we're going to be doing differently today is I do have a hard time limit because I'm almost out of hours. So we're going to stop right at 2.5 hours. So I apologize for that for anyone who's not super happy about that. While people are getting the gist of it and joining, I thought I would add a little conversation to the stage. And what we're going to do is talk a little bit about whether or not the body of Jesus was simply discarded. And I made a little PowerPoint about this, but it's okay because I'm going to run through it really, really fast. All right. So the reason why I'm talking about this today is because after my video on the shroud, a lot of people, for some reason, were commenting on that video saying the body of Jesus was simply discarded. This has been largely debunked, and the scholarly consensus on this really has changed in the last few decades. And we can talk briefly about why. All right. So I'm actually going to talk about why, but I'm going to leave out all the biblical evidence. So what we're just going to talk about today is some of the Roman and Judean evidence that the body of Jesus was not discarded. But to cite this, we're not going to use any Christian literature. So I'm going to totally leave out the biblical sources. And some people said, well, it's my burden of proof to say the body was indeed served with a burial. But the reason why that's not the case is because it's not a supernatural claim. There's no theological impact to it. It's just a historical question. So we'll talk a little bit about Roman law. This is the main anchoring point, the Digest of Justinian 48.24.1. Now, this is often misquoted, but it very clearly says that the bodies of those who are condemned should not be refused to their relatives. And it says specifically, at the time that Jesus was crucified, this was the practice. It goes on to say in Justinian 48.24.3 that the bodies of the punished, quote, should be given to whomever requests them for burial. So we have a very clear precedent in Roman law. We also have very good evidence from Josephus that the Jews who were crucified were taken down even when they were condemned. And I'm just going to talk briefly about this because I see that a few people popped into the stage. But Josephus very clearly says the Jews took much care to bury their people who were condemned and crucified and bury them before the going down of the sun. That's very important for Jewish law. If you leave any body up above ground without being buried by the sunset, then that's an act that defiles the land. So it has nothing to do with the guilt or of the victim of the crucifixion. It has nothing to do with dishonoring them. It has to do with defiling the land, essentially. Philo also gives us very good explanations on this. He does say that there were outrageous circumstances in which the bodies were not buried before sunset, but Philo lists these as outrageous counterexamples to the normal standard of practice. So, and Philo tells us that there were instances where men who were crucified were taken down and given up to their relations, and that this was particularly something that was done during festivals. By the way, when he talks about the exceptions to this rule, he's not talking about any exceptional situations in Judea. So Philo is not at all talking about Judean rule. He's talking about Roman rule, where there were exceptions in some circumstances. In Jewish law, it's very important to bury even criminals, even very dishonorable criminals, underground because it defiles the land if you don't do that. The Jewish law is very clear on this. I'm going to skip over some of these word slides. We have two examples of people who were crucified, both of whom were buried. And these are the only known crucifixion victims that we have. Yehohanan ben Hagkol was excavated in 1868. This was an interesting case because it showed us that indeed people who were crucified were nailed. They weren't just tied with rope. Before that, we didn't know that. And then in 2021, we found a Roman era man who was, again, in Rome, but was crucified in a Roman period cemetery. And again, this is Rome, not Judea, but it's an important example. The food for crows argument is that there are some poetic flourishes where some poets in some literature say that people who are criminals should be, food for crows. But that doesn't mean that it's usually a rhetorical flourish. It's usually in the context of satire. I'm not going to go through all of these sources, but that's generally what we have here. It'd be like saying right now, if you were killed, your food for worms. That's kind of a rhetorical flourish. So now, there's also evidence that we have from Tacitus. Okay. Now, Tacitus does describe a situation where accused senators were killed and were deprived of burial. But again, that's Rome. That's not in Judea. And that was for a specific treasonous terror after the fall of Sejanus, which were called the Maestas trials. So, and none of these individuals, by the way, were crucified. But this is in Rome. It's not in Judea. And again, there's another exception in that is from Suetonius that, but again, this is somewhat satirical. He talks about how a criminal begged to be buried and the birds will settle that question. But again, this is a literature, a work of literature, not a work of historical accounting. Now, another thing that gets often cited is Declamations 274. This is from Quintilian, or really pseudo-Quintilian. But what this says is the most crowded roads are chosen for crucifixion where most people can see what's going on. But this is a statement about the location. It is not a statement about the duration of crucifixion. Moreover, this is in fact a rhetorical exercise. So the argument here was that these were students who were, it's kind of the way you would give a student a political topic to debate about. That's where this work comes from. Declamations are examples of rhetorical challenge argument. Now, Martin Hengel in 1977 was widely regarded as the key voice on this. His contention was crucifixion was aggravated by the fact that quite often, this is a direct quote, quite often its victims were never buried. And this comes from Hengel in the 1970s. Now, this is likely what Bart Ehrman bases his statements on, and we'll get to Ehrman's statements later. But Hengel was updated by John Granger Cook, and actually Hengel endorsed John Granger Cook's work on crucifixion, which has become the definitive work on crucifixion. This is not a Christian apologist. John Granger Cook is a neutral scholar, but he wrote Crucifixion and Burial, and that's the leading study, and Cook is the authoritative voice on this issue, and his verdict is the burial accounts would be perfectly comprehensible for a Greco-Roman reader and historically credible. So the historical consensus did change, and Engel actually verified this as well. Now, the Ehrman quote comes earlier on, where Ehrman said crucified victims were usually left on their crosses as food for scavengers. That's the common thing that people quote. But again, later on, Ehrman changed this perspective, and he said, my view now is that we don't know and cannot know what actually happened to Jesus' body. But that's, again, just coming from Ehrman, and if you listen to Cook, at least the crucifixion and subsequent burial was at least palatable. Now, there are a lot of other people who have cited the contrary literature, but it's very clear for me that neutral scholarship suggests that, very simply, if you didn't have anything in the New Testament, if you didn't have any Christian literature at all, you would still conclude that a first century Jewish crucifixion victim in Judea executed in peacetime would more than likely have been taken down and buried. All right. So I'm going to take this down now. And, but just, I don't know why that was such a big topic of discussion, but let's bring up Denzelito. Denzelito, good to have you here. Are you over 18?
Yeah, I am, Tavo.
Are you there, Denzelito? Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Are you over 18?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and what's your belief system?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, at the very beginning, I'm a fan of your channel, and I try to come in. Yeah, I try to come in, try to see. Like, I was watching the previous debate that you hosted. It was just very interesting. Yeah, so I'm just reading, the title here, and I want to kind of like, so I guess I believe I'm a Christian, right? But I guess I believe, because I was talking to someone previously, and I just want to ask real quick: do you want me to stay on the topic of kind of like the topic of the slides that you were just talking about? I
No,
don't want
no,
to feel
no.
like
You can ask me anything, whatever you'd like to talk about. I'm happy to chat with you about. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
This is a little bit different than how we normally do things, in part because I'm a little bit under the weather, and in part also because usually we kind of have everyone coming up at once, and I just felt like maybe what I'll try to do this time is talk to people one on one, and we'll see how this goes. If this doesn't go well, we'll switch back. But
Okay. Okay. So, okay. Yeah. This would kind of be my first time because I pop up here and there, and yeah, I do usually see a bunch of people. But this is really just a quick kind of comment or question that I have, and I want to hear your opinion on it.
sure.
Because I was previously talking to like this atheist that kind of believed that that it was almost kind of like nonsensical to believe in like a to believe that an idea of theism, because there was like this debate that they were having, and the kind of like the prompt was like, uh, it was funny. It was proving theism, but the person wasn't really trying to prove anything, but it was just something that was up there, and he kind of had like this. He was kind of like, well, we have quantum mechanics, and we have these studies from long periods of time that say really that we can just totally disregard the idea of theism, and to think that if it was true is just kind of nonsense. And because I know that I've heard of your background. I know that you've had like an like atheist background. I just want to like ask like what do you what do you say to something like that? Like, how do you like to just kind of like
Yeah,
disregard it? Because
yeah.
I know that a lot of, or I've heard that a lot of, if it weren't for kind of like, Christianity and whatnot, that there wouldn't really be these like, like I guess the Enlightenment. I guess that's what it is. I'm not very well educated on the stuff I'm trying to learn. Um,
No, that's fine. I mean, I'll try to answer your question by your question is it has theology been obviated by quantum mechanics?
Quantum mechanics, science. He was saying it's science in general. It was kind of he was kind of being very broad about it. I didn't really. I just wanted to like kind of understand what he was kind of getting at. I guess his
I think
position
I
was
would
like,
guess, having not heard the conversation, I would guess that the argument that he's quoting is a little bit more narrow. He's probably quoting
Mhm.
people who have said that you can get the universe without any appeal to theology. In other words, we have a putative mechanism, which is highly conjectural and not experimentally verified, but a putative mechanism whereby this universe could arise without any appeal to any specific theistic creator. Right. Now, the best
yeah,
articulation of that is a book by Lawrence Krauss, which was called A Universe from Nothing, where he talks about how the universe could have arisen as a structural, the singularity could have emerged from a structural, from a, um, uh, I forget the word that he uses, but basically the singularity could have popped into existence the way we know quantum particles can pop in and out of existence. Right.
right,
Now, the basis for this in quantum mechanics is a little bit beyond what I'll go into. But the point is that if you look at a field of quote unquote empty space, there are still quantum mechanical fields that exist in that empty space. And there are virtual particles that pop in and out of existence. So his argument is that the universe could have popped into existence the way virtual particles do. Now,
yeah,
that's one possible mechanism why the universe could come into existence. But right now, the science around that is unsettled. It's an interesting mechanism, but it is not widely embraced as the way the universe came to be. There are three different models for how the universe came to be. One is sort of, what we think of as the Big Bang singularity. That was the beginning of time. The next is that there's this, I think it's called Hawking-Hartle variant, where basically it wasn't a singularity, but it was something very close to a singularity that existed for a long time, essentially before the explosion that we think of as the Big Bang. It's an interesting theory. And the third mechanism is sort of an ekpyrotic mechanism. Ekpyrotic just means, for lack of a better word, essentially like a cyclical universe. And in that model, there's this like M-brain theory is where to look up more information about that. But the science is inconclusive as to whether or not this universe could have emerged from nothing. Now, I, like many scientists, I believe, and I'm not a, I'm my field is in applied physics, so and I'm a medical doctor, so it's very, very different than talking to a quantum physicist who would probably give you a better answer for all this stuff. But like many scientists, I believe that it's very likely that the moment of the creation of the universe is something that will be forever be beyond the event horizon of our ability to experimentally inquire about it. Now, the reason for that is because if you want to see earlier and earlier epochs of the universe, you have to have bigger and bigger particle colliders and smash things together, right? So,
Mhm.
and by the way, when I say M brain, it's M dash BRANE if you want to look it up. So it's not that
Okay.
BRAIN spelling. Anyways,
Yeah.
so the problem is to get to earlier and earlier moments in the universe, you have to have bigger and bigger particle colliders to generate enough energy to do that. You see what I'm saying? So if you get
Mhm.
to the first Planck scale of the universe, the projection is that you need as much energy as the universe itself. So some scientists think we'll never get there. Right now, we don't know where the universe came from. We don't know what existed before the universe. We don't know what happened at the first instance of the universe, and nobody does. So, I don't think I don't. I think saying quantum mechanics has made theology irrelevant is an extrapolation of quantum mechanics, but I definitely think it's not a proven statement. Now, the thing I will say is, I don't think anyone should get too wrapped up into these mechanistic questions because I think it's just not productive. I think I kind of treat the sciences as a way of answering mechanistic, causal, and how type questions of the universe. And I think of theology as a way of answering questions that are why type questions about the universe. Why are we here? What is the purpose? Is there a greater purpose? What is the purpose of morality? Is there any spiritual realm? Is there any theological realm? Is there a creator God? Does that creator God care about us? Those are all to me theological questions. I suspect none of those will ever be purely answerable by the sciences. But I mean, I think science is getting closer and closer to revealing the first moments of the universe. But there are very good reasons to think that the science will never actually get to that first moment, and therefore the origin of the universe will always be a matter of some conjecture. And that's fine by me. I think that's sort of an interesting universe. But I definitely think we are not. I think there are very few physicists who would stake their reputation on the claim that physics has made theology irrelevant or unnecessary or non-existent.
Yeah, because I agree because that's exactly what I was thinking at. I was just thinking, well, it's kind of hard because science, like you just said, it's not necessarily it can't ask the whys. It's not its job to ask the whys. It and something I guess just one more thing that I want to bring up before I head out. He did bring up the idea of like how like oh gosh, I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. Like time was like before, like no, gosh, it was either time before the beginning of the universe or like time didn't exist. Like the universe existed, but time wasn't there. And it, I guess I just didn't. Again, I'm not a scientist. I'm not too sure like what he meant by that because like I asked him
Yeah,
so
I
that
mean,
there was a point
this
in
is
time.
yeah. I mean, I think I know what you're getting at because the argument gets overstated. So, did the
Okay.
universe have a beginning? Is the usual relevant question that people ask, right? Because a lot of time, people who are on the theological side of the spectrum will overstate the confidence that the universe did have a beginning, that beginning was the start of time, and that the universe started at the Big Bang. So, like I said, there are three different models, and only one of those models, which is the kind of conventional Big Bang model, has time starting at the beginning of the universe. I think it's reasonable to think that time, we don't really know what time is, first of all. So that's one of the problems. I think it's
Mhm.
reasonable to argue that time as we know it, as we understand it, began with the expansion of space. So that's sort of really close to the Big Bang moment. Did time exist before that moment? I don't I don't think that's a known answer. I think if it
Yeah.
did, it might have had a very different appearance to it. We know from like understanding Minkowski space-time that time and space are the same, essentially the same thing, right? So the expansion of space and the starting of time intuitively is obvious, and it's kind of consistent with quantum mechanics and relativity, that as space started to expand, that's when time really started. But that's not, I would never want to apply an intuitive argument to a quantum mechanical question. So again, the cosmological and cosmognomic questions around that are not settled. I will say this, that I sympathize with you, because I've been parts of in debates, and I've been in discussions where people talk about this as though these questions are very settled, and they really aren't on either side. So I think we're until we have a really good experimental body of, where we've duplicated the conditions of the Big Bang, I think we're kind of conjecturing in the dark. Leonard Susskind said it best. He said, we don't understand the first moments of time. We don't understand the beginning of the universe. And not only do we don't understand it, our understanding is so poor that we don't even know whether or not we're asking the right questions about it. I think that's a much more epistemically humble way to look at it. Leonard Susskind was a great physicist and is essentially one of the founding fathers of string theory, and probably knows more about black holes than almost anyone alive. So I think you make a good point.
Yeah. And I guess I feel like it's not the arguments using science that really kind of deter me from like theism. It's more of like the moral side of it, that like just science wouldn't necessarily be able to. I mean, I know there's certain arguments. Again, I'm not like super educated on it, but it's the moral side, and I try to picture like where like just a secular society and the idea of like religion and like, ethics, like more like morality. I feel like that's very is what kind of steers me towards theism in a way. But anyways, I just wanted to bring that up. And it was great.
I hope we talk again, Denzelito. What's your username on YouTube? Because I don't think I recognize it, but maybe I've seen you in comment section.
Here I'll say a little chat.
Yeah. No pressure. Hello. No pressure either way, but I do hope we talk again. And I'm gonna bring up Max next, if you're ready, Max. And there's Denzelito. Okay, so it is. Denzelito. Okay.
Yes.
I'll keep my eyes open for that. And don't forget, if you're not subscribed already, please click the like button. Please subscribe. I'm gonna go ahead and go to the next person, but stick around at the end. We'll probably just, if we run out of time, we don't get to everybody, we'll probably bring everybody up at once. But nice to chat with you. I hope you come back, and I hope we talk again. You're also welcome to email me. So if you have other questions, you can email me. My email address is just dr.tavosanabri@gmail.com. So it's on my channel too. So just DrTavosanabri. So if you ever have any questions and you want to shoot them over to me.
Sounds good. All right. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Nice to chat with you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. All right. Max. Whoops.
Hello.
Oh, there we go. All right. Okay. Hey, Max. Good to see you. I'm really glad that we're getting alone time, because I feel like you got kind of shortchanged.
Yeah, actually, I was going to talk about something from last week. You mentioned moral self-licensing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of sources, and I also found some of my own. I think this might be, I would like to work through a few different sources. So the first one you mentioned was Monin and Miller, I believe.
Yeah, and just to update people on where the conversation was and why we talked about this, we were talking about sort of quote unquote original sin as an idea. And so what I was talking about is that humans are, and maybe I worded it a little bit strongly, but I was making the argument that there is a need for forgiveness from God because humans are bad. And this is the kind of state. Robin, who's actually in the chat, hopefully we'll talk to Robin very soon, who has a great channel, Robin Webster. Her channel is really fantastic. But anyways, the conversation was about whether or not humans need forgiveness and original sin, and whether or not there's justification for that, and whether or not people are inherently good. So that's what we were talking about last week.
Yeah. Okay, so moral self-licensing for people, I guess, in the chat to follow, is that if you think of yourself as a good person, you give yourself license to then do bad acts. That's the mechanism that's proposed. And there's also an opposite mechanism called moral consistency, where doing good acts makes you more likely to do more good acts in the future. You're aware of moral consistency as well, right, Tavo?
Yeah, philanthropy breeds more philanthropy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the studies are like similar. It's just sometimes they find moral consistency and sometimes they find moral like self-licensing. It's a huge overlap in the actual research. So Monin and Miller was from 2001. And in the last 25 years, as far as I can tell, it has one failed replication and no successful replications. Were you aware of that?
No, but I mean, there's plenty of studies, and I don't know.
Okay, I'm going through them
yeah,
though. Like just
yeah. Sure, but
studies.
here's the broader point, Max. Well, do you think that humans are inherently good?
I'm making a point that you said there was a huge amount of evidence for moral self-licensing. I've found meta-analysis from 2019 and 2020, 2025, which point to a very low effect, and some say statistically zero moral self-licensing.
Let's put aside the body of evidence. Okay, let's start with the really theologically impactful premise: are people good or are they not good? Because I think that's really the more poignant question.
Well, I mean, we would have to. I mean, I would say it's more mixed rather than either one. I think it leans more towards good than evil.
Well, let me ask you this, Max, and I mean, this always comes up because the reason why this always comes up in a way that's problematic is because it's hard for me to say, Max, you're a bad person. So whenever, like, I had a great conversation with Brooklyn Lou, and he's like, I'm a nice guy, I don't need forgiveness for anyone. And it's hard for me to make that indictment to anyone, really. And it's just because I'm a polite person, right? But the real issue is, have we done bad things? Are we appropriately contrite about the bad things that we've done? Do we need forgiveness, or are we just fine the way we are?
Well, I mean, if somebody does something bad, they should get forgiveness from the victim, not a random guy in the sky, in my opinion.
Well, okay, but I mean, yeah, and that's a reasonable perspective, but it's not always true that you're going to ask for forgiveness from every victim. Like, for instance, there's capitalist people who exploit entire populations, right? I mean, like, I guess let me ask you this, Max: have you wronged someone, and have you then asked for forgiveness after that?
I mean, I do ask people for forgiveness sometimes. I guess I could be better in that regard, but it also depends. Some crimes are worse than others.
Do you eat meat?
Yeah.
I mean, there's massive suffering that results from that, obviously.
Well, if a God existed, he created animals to be eaten, so it's really his fault.
Well, but you're the one who's, I mean, you're the one who's eating meat, though. You're the one who's causing those animals to suffer. I mean, do you think?
I mean, I'm omnivorous. My body evolved to eat meat.
Not necessarily. Like, I'm a vegetarian. I do fine. I mean, it's my choice. Isn't it your choice to be like? God's not forcing you to eat meat, Max.
So for most of human history, it was not plausible to be vegetarian because you'd be insufficient in protein.
Okay, but it's easier now
that you have crops.
I'm here with you right now, and you have a choice to make, and I'm just pointing out that the choice that you're making, that you don't seem to mind at all, you have no moral qualms with it, is a choice that leads to animals suffering tremendously.
And so then how is this made right by a guy forgiving?
Well, do you know much about Jainism?
Does that actually make it better for the animals?
Not eating meat? Yeah.
No, I mean, forgiveness. You're saying God needs to forgive you. How does that make it better for animals?
I don't know that it makes it better. I think you could make it better by not eating meat.
So then the forgiveness is what, a red herring?
No. I think there's a deontological purpose for like the teleological justification is the animal suffering. Should you do everything in your power to keep animals from suffering? I would argue yes, right? But is it morally okay if something suffers at your hands and you don't care about it? I would say no. That's where asking for forgiveness is important. Now, if you're just asking for forgiveness because it's your way of getting to heaven, I feel like that's not adequate either, right? I don't believe in sort of cheap or free grace as it's sometimes called in the Christological literature. I believe that, you have to be contrite, you have to be penitent, you have to be humble when you ask for forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Max, I mean, you got to look around at the world and say that humans are the cause of massive, massive suffering on all of the animals that we're in charge of, all the animals that we take care of. We've decimated every single ecosystem that we've come into contact with. We've created power structures that are built on subjugating and exploiting other people. Like, I just don't see how you can look at this and say, yeah, this is a good thing, and we don't need to think about it any further.
So you think that people basically are just cruel all the time, and that's their
No,
natural?
I'm not, and I'm not. I don't think that's the binary that we're stuck in. I think sometimes we can choose to be good. I mean, do you know much about Jainism?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not going to say I know a lot. I
Yeah.
know you could explain more, just to be fair.
Jainism is a really beautiful religion. It's probably my favorite religion, but it basically says that you shouldn't cause any suffering for any living thing, right? Um, sorry, Robin says I don't know what that's related to. It just popped up on my feed, so I just thought I'd look at it. Okay, so Jainism says that you shouldn't cause any suffering for any living thing, right? Now, I think that's a beautiful doctrine, but here's the problem with it is you know that's not how it's just not feasible to live like that. You can't. There's never been a society based on Jainism that has successfully scaled up, that kind of ethic of never letting even a microorganism suffer because of your actions. So it's just not feasible. So to me, yes, you're right. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I eat. You're saying to me, I eat animals. You, right? And
Mm.
you. I don't think that you're not a caring person. I think if I walked you through a slaughter facility, you'd be mortified and you'd really feel bad, and you might even switch to being a vegetarian for a while. But my point is that as humans, we do these things. We don't think about them. We don't care about them. At least we don't care enough about them to, like, out of sight, out of mind. But I mean, that should at least give you some moral pause. It should at least tell you a little bit. I am causing some harm in the world, and I don't even think about that. And look, and I'll be honest with you, Max. I've done really bad things. I've really hurt people, and
Mhm.
I mean, my and it's one of the things that actually keeps me from being more closely aligned with Christianity, to be honest. But my father passed away, and I wasn't there, and we'd been out of contact for about 30 years, and I feel very, very disgraced. Now, when he passed away, I was an atheist. I was an atheist for long after he passed away. But I feel like now, I do ask for forgiveness. It's not it's not cheap or easy or free, and it doesn't mean that I didn't do that harm. In other words, I can't just go around like slapping people and just say, well, I'm forgiven, so it doesn't really matter. I think that's why I balance your perspective. Hey, we're alive, we're creating some harm, with a perspective of Jesus saying, but we got to be contrite, we got to be penitent, we got to be pensive about the fact that we're harming the world.
Okay. So if I think deeply about that, can you think more deeply about your citing of sources?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, there is a crisis of reproducibility throughout the sciences, right?
Hmm.
And you can change permutations of studies very, very, very mild ways. I believe that the Milgram experiments were something that was repeated. But here's the real story about that repeat of the Milgram experiments is it was hard for them to find people who weren't already familiar with the situation, who didn't already know something about the situation that they were in, and were therefore skeptical about the experimenter.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that makes study reproduction difficult. But my point is broader. I think if you look at the world, there are people who are hurting other people, and there's too many of them, and they don't think about it, and we don't think about it either. And I would bet that you're a perfectly nice person. I would bet that have you ever had an animal who's a pet?
I've got a bunch of pets.
Yeah, I bet I've never had a pet, but I bet you really love your animals. I bet you're a really caring person. And it's just the way humans are, we don't think about the damage that we're doing.
Hmm. I mean, it's food for thought, but I don't know that that directly translates to a God forgiving people. It's more like people need to clean up their own problems.
And I think that's true too. I think that in my humble opinion, looking over the doctrines around forgiveness through all religions, looking across all religions, as I like to do, I think Christianity is the only one that offers us a real pathway to forgiveness. I think the karmic pathway of Buddhism is really beautiful in some ways, but it's also really very deeply problematic in many, many other ways. So but look, I would never say that because you're forgiven, you don't need to clean up your act. I definitely think we all need to clean up our acts.
Okay. Okay, so that's one point. But I find it annoying when you do this thing where you make a claim and you say, here's a bunch of sources that support me. And then I look up the source, like I feel like a chump because you're not interested in talking about moral self-licensing. I found like 6 or 7 sources, and it's like frankly, you're completely wrong on how well supported moral self-licensing is.
Okay, all right. I mean, and
I just in the future be like more restrained about the claims you're making, or I don't know how to say it. I think you need a bit more humility.
Can I ask how do you so the studies that didn't duplicate Monin and Miller's results, how do you know that was just not due to population heterogeneity?
Like, words, they've given the explanation of small sample sizes on Monin and Miller. The more recent studies have larger samples.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm okay with that. That I don't know that diffuses my point.
But you were fairly confident that you were so confident that this was like a really strongly supported mechanism. There's a little bit of evidence for it occurring in certain situations, and that's more complicated. But I just don't care for the tone.
Here's my point. Okay, the Milgram experiments were real. They were real documented things. The Monin and Miller experiments were real documented things.
But Monin and Miller has been a larger sample disproves it. It was failed replication.
No. I understand that, but did they have? But you're saying the reason that they gave was because they had a larger sample size.
Monin and Miller, the later ones have a larger sample size. Yes.
Okay. Well, doesn't that show that at least some people have this tendency to engage in moral self-licensing and use that to permit bad behaviors?
It could be random. Like, we don't know that it was actually their thinking. Well, like why they did it.
Okay, your point is well taken. I should be more careful with these sources. You're welcome to send me some. If you've done real research, I'd be like.
I mean, I do have some. I can send you some. I think most of these are publicly available without a paywall, even. So you can probably check out. I'll see. I'll collect some sources for you to look at on this.
Yeah, I log in through my university account. So. Yeah, but I mean, here's the point, though. I think you can say, yeah, I'm a pretty good person. That's a hard argument for me to argue against because you, Max, are a pretty good person from everything I know, and we've talked a few times, and I would endorse that. But if you put that on a societal level, then you have, I think, people who are doing a lot of harm who don't think about it as much as they ought to. The Monin and Miller experiment was fairly discreet. It involved people writing essays about themselves, and if they wrote a critical essay, then afterwards they were more inclined to help other people and give to philanthropy. If they wrote a more extolling essay about themselves, they were less inclined to do so afterwards. So that was an insight about moral self-licensing, which I think is still a thing. I think it's still real. The fact that it wasn't duplicated in a bigger study doesn't mean that moral self-licensing.
Well, I think the newer studies say there are situations where it shows up. Yeah, where it doesn't.
But my point is that doesn't mean that as a phenomenology, moral self-licensing doesn't exist. But my point is broader, and I'll be sure to qualify it, make it broader. That I think that humans do bad things, and we don't think about it. We hurt people, and we hurt the environment, and we exploit other people. And to say that I'm pretty nice, so I don't need God's forgiveness. Honestly, if somebody says that to me, I generally get kind of worried about the harm that they're doing that they don't even think about. And that's just a general. I mean, that's not to speak ill of you or Robin or anyone else or Brooklyn Lou that I've had these conversations with. You all are, as far as I know, really wonderful people. But I just, how can you like go through this life and hurt as many things as humans hurt and not at least think about it a little bit?
I mean, I'll think about it more now, if that makes you feel better.
You make me feel better by engaging with me in conversations that are very insightful, and Yeah. I hope we keep talking, Max. Feel free to send me all the citations you want me to read.
Yeah, I'll just collect a few, and you can look at some of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess
I can speak only for myself, really, in terms of my own morality, and I can tell you that I once felt like I was a pretty nice person, but I have done things that I regret in this life, and that's not something that should drive me towards or away from Christianity. It's just something that I think is something that I should acknowledge more often.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I guess that was a constructive conversation there. I mean, you can bring in the next person. I mean, I think that was the main point I was going to make.
Okay, we'll keep talking, Max. Send me an email with those sources. I'm always happy to look at it. I really appreciate our interaction, Max. There's other things that I need to share about the stuff that we've talked about together too.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Talk to you soon, Max.
Yeah. See you.
All right. That was great. That was really a nice example of a pleasant conversation. It's sometimes we have more acrimonious conversations in this space, and that was a good conversation. All right, let's bring up Chronicle. And thanks, Kefa, for I think we are at like something like 100. We are at like 908 likes. So that's really nice. So yeah, if you're listening and you want to like the video, I'd really appreciate that. All right, Chronicle's up. What's up, Chronicle? Chronicle, you there? We've had some problems connecting with Chronicle before. So Chronicle, I'm going to give you a little more time, and then I'll go to Adrian, and then I'll bring you back up, Chronicle, if that's okay. Okay, I don't know if you're saying yes or no, but it's really great to see everybody in the chat. Good to see Lena, Zara, Dr. Kurt, Kelly, good to see you as well. Hope we get to chat again. Keva, Macintosh Pro, thanks for all the shout outs. All right, Chronicle, I'll go to Adrian, and then I'll flip back to you. Oops. Hey, Adrian, good to see you. How's it been going?
Thank you, Dr. Tavo. It's been well. It's been well.
How do you like this format, this like one-on-one format, rather than like the big kind of free-for-all huge group chat?
Personally, I think it's more structured. Honestly, I mean, I know there's people that want to talk off the cuff and stuff like that, and I think people need to watch. I think people are more conscious of not interrupting each other. So I think this is straight. This is your channel, so you decide really. But yeah, I like it.
Well, same question to the chat. I'd love to know if you like this format better, or if you like the whole like free for all format. So I'd love to know either way what you all think. What's some stuff you're working on, Adrian? You've got a great channel where you make beats and you talk about Jesus, and it's really fantastic. I finally went by and like had some free time, so I checked out some of your videos, and they're really great. I clicked the like button on all of them.
I want to shout out, like, for real. I'm at 100. Thank you guys for subbing to the channel. This is the vision that I had, to get God's word out to the four corners of the world. Straight up. Wednesdays are open panel, open topics. It doesn't really have to, we don't really have to talk Bible, but if you want to, we can cross that road. And Thursdays is straight Bible reading. I try to change it up with different translations. And like Dr. Tavo said, while I make random beats in the background, just to have a chill vibe while we in that word. That's it.
Dope. And that's every Wednesday at what time?
I'm trying to 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 5:43 where I'm at. I'm trying that time just so like once I get that in, I can have time with my wife.
Yeah, right on. Okay, I'll try and keep that in mind, so that like if I'm online during that window. And I do a series called Talking with Tavo, where we should have you do that. That's what I did last week with On Day 3. So yeah, and by the way, Robin, who's coming up after you, I will threaten you with that offer as well, even though I've like made that offer a few times, so I don't want to like harangue you about it. But if you ever want to do a Talking with Tavo, like I'd be happy to do that. Robin also, who's on next. But anyways,
and let me. Oh, I was going to say, if I can, and I don't mean to cut you off, Doctor. I welcome all types of people. I don't discriminate. Brothers and sisters in Christ, of course, I'll watch y'all on the channel to get that word in. But atheists, I have like dope atheist friends. Come through. You know what I mean? Muslims, I don't care. I don't discriminate. Titus 3:2. We malign no one up in here. So come through and take something home with you.
Right on. And Kefa put your channel up there, so that's your channel. So
Hey,
thanks, Kefa,
thank
for
you,
that.
Kefa.
And I think that's meant
Appreciate
to
you.
be read in an Arnold Schwarzenegger accent. So let me try and do that. Adrian's channel. Subscribe to it now. Do it now. What are you waiting for? Okay, there we go. That's a terrible Arnold Schwarzenegger, but there you go. Yeah. Anything you want to ask?
Yes.
No, since what can I use? And it doesn't even matter whether I talk to atheists or anybody that don't believe in the word, right? Outside of trying to put Bible in their dome, what type of other resource do you think I could recommend? If would you recommend if they try to go like science route or they go archaeology route? I have study Bibles that cover archaeology, but like outside sources outside the Bible, is there anything that you would recommend?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it's kind of hard because everyone likes to talk about their own things. Like some people want to talk about morality. I find that to be very challenging because everyone sort of has a different, idea about that. I'm working my way through this book by Jimmy Akin. So, do you know who that is? He's a really great guy.
No.
He's a
Jimmy Akins.
Yeah, Jimmy Akin. He's got they're really great books.
I'm gonna write some notes so like I could take some with me.
Yeah.
Jimmy Akins. All right.
And then have you traded emails with On Day 3?
I haven't yet. We need to do a collab. Like I don't know what. I got the beats. You already know. So yeah, we definitely need to do something.
Why don't you do this? Why don't you send me an email and I'll send you some of the resources that On Day 3 has. My biggest suggestion to people is like I'm sort of apologetically aligned, but I'm not very good at this, And I think the more you do, the better you get. So
absolutely.
So I've been a discussant a few times and I feel like I'm getting better, but I would say if your question is and I guess I'll put up some information about Macintosh Pro.
Thanks, Macintosh. Appreciate you, fam. Thank you, bro.
Yeah. I would suggest, like I kind of found a niche where I do the the CTF argument is kind of my niche where I talk about the historical evidence because I just think that's persuasive. And coming from the perspective of an atheist, I was really kind of surprised by some of the information that I found. So, but that was kind of my niche. I wonder if there's some way to combine your insights about art and music with a theological window. Yeah, Random Catholic. This is one of the books that I have. I know Jimmy Akin is getting some. It's called a Daily
Defense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you ever see him on a show, you just call in and he'll send you these books for free. So but On Day 3 has and thanks Sarah for the shout out. On Day 3 has some really great stuff where he's turned this stuff into very algorithmic little scripts that you can follow that are really easy to follow.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think you have a talent for music. Maybe there's some way to say like
music is my talent. And I thank God for that. Like music is my love for real.
You know what you should do that I think would gain a lot of viewers? Have you ever done a rap battle with an atheist?
You know what?
Really cool.
I put my bars down. I spit my 8-bar rap summary of the Bible the Bible chapter and verse that I'm reading currently. Like say I do a James 2 8-bar rap summary, for example. It's like I do that for every video. I say that in saying I have a secular humanist that writes down his bars on the comments as well. So I encourage that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be rap. Just put down 8 bars,
Right
or,
on.
just have fun with it. I'm trying to find different ways to make Bible reading fun because this is for our souls here, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, Dr. Kurt's got like some rhymes there for you.
Oh man,
Yeah.
Kirk is Dr. Kirk is something else, but he is my guy though. He definitely a smart man.
Yeah, and don't forget, if you're interested in hearing more about my career as a rapper, which I have given up due to popular demand, once I get to 1,000 subs, I'm gonna reveal my rapper moniker. So my pseudonym or rapper moniker will be revealed at 1,000 subs. So
Hey, there it is. We almost there, y'all. Like and subscribe to Dr. Tavo's and get your mind right. For real, for real. So
all right,
definitely.
well, let me bring up. I'll go to Chronicle and then Robin. But good to see you, Adrian. And anytime you're like
Thank you,
working
sir.
on stuff, like give me a shout out, shoot me an email. You got my email address, right? It's on my channel, Dr. Tavo Centerbury, and I'll put you in touch with On Day 3 too.
Yeah, I'm a definitely be looking for that email. So expect that today. So we'll get that in.
Right on, right on. Good to see you, Adrian. Well done.
Hey, thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, keep it up. All right, let's see if Chronicle is here now. And I accidentally went to Robin a little too quickly, but let's see. Is Chronicle here? We've got Robin up too, but Chronicle already there.
Yeah.
Okay, Robin, let me just spend some time with Chronicle, and then go ahead, Chronicle. Are you there? Okay, let's go to Robin, and we'll come back to Chronicle after that. Robin, are you there?
I feel like that they're getting their mic coming on, but
I'm not sure. They're muted, and I think they
unmute, and I'm hearing like some background noise or something.
Let's see, Chronicle. Can you see if you see? Oh, there's Chronicle. Okay.
Yes.
Hey, Chronicle, how's it going? Or you want to just hang out for this conversation with Chronicle, then Robin can come back?
Yes, I'm good.
Good to see you, Chronicle. You're Hindu, right?
Like,
you're Hindu?
Yes, I'm Hindu.
I think maybe they need like go into the settings and set like their noise reduction or something.
Yeah. Let's come back to Chronicle after you, Robin. And Chronicle, if you can, just because I don't want to like blow people's ears, I'm gonna remove you for now. But Chronicle, if you're listening to this, see if you can like fix the background noise on your mic. I know that's been an issue when you've chatted in the past, and I don't want to like send anyone home with like bleeding ears from this chat. But good to see you, Robin. How's it going?
Good. Yeah, it was nice to see Adrian. I love Adrian. I was going to tell you, about you were talking about the vegan stuff. I see veganism as a moral virtue. I'm not convinced yet that it's a moral duty, but I think eventually that probably we will get there as a society. Hopefully, definitely am against mistreating animals, but right now I'm kind of at the place to where I think we can ethically source meat.
Yeah, I mean, the way it works for me is, and I hope this doesn't sound hypocritical, but like if I'm at somebody's house and they've made food, I'll just eat whatever they've made for me, because I don't want to like, I feel like that way it's already like been killed, and but and I don't want to impose my preference on other people, but it does give me like very deep pause that we're PAUSE, that we're so cruel to the animals that we
I agree.
But I'm not like a better person because of that. Like we had a mouse problem in our neighborhood, and I put out the mouse poison, and I kind of felt bad for doing that. But
just don't put. Well, I mean, like the rodents can lead to a lot of diseases. Just don't use the sticky traps.
No, I don't use those. I know those are particularly inhumane. Yeah, Jackie actually helped me.
I can't deal with those at all. Like, those are horrible. I had 4 cats, so I don't have a mouse problem.
Yeah, that's probably another good way to do it. I'm not supposed to be around cats because they have toxoplasmosis, but
okay. Well, then
if you have indoor cats, it's probably not the big deal.
But my occasionally one really stupid mouse will come in my house, but like they regret it. The last one, I finally caught it and put it back outside, but it was so wore out. My cats were like poking it to try to make it run.
Oh yeah.
So like, not a good idea if you're a mouse to come traipsing up into my house.
Yeah. Robin, what do you got coming up on your channel?
Nothing right now except for I have Jill and Objective Ethics are going to debate biblical slavery on the 20.
Jill and Objective Ethics? So there should
be again, yes. Again. Yes. Like they decided this, so they're on the 29th, I think is when it is. So the last time it was just about morality, and this time it is specifically about slavery. So,
yeah, I mean, I think I heard most of the debate between OE and Jill last time, and I think Jill tapped out, right?
Jill, yeah, he refused to answer questions. I'm gonna hold both of. I'm gonna hold them to their assignment a little better this time. I kind of got a lot of people who gave me a lot of pushback about letting them kind of, do things their way or whatever. They were like, you shouldn't have allowed that and you shouldn't have allowed that. So,
well, OE is, I think, going to have a debate on my channel too on slavery, so that should be interesting as well.
Yeah,
and I'm going to moderate, I think so.
Yeah, he's good, but like I get along with Jill too. It was his ideal to have the debate on my channel, so yeah. Obviously Jill feels comfortable debating there anyway, so I guess that's good.
Yeah, well, I love your channel. It's fantastic. I've not done a whole lot on it, but if you ever wanted me to come up and do anything, I'm happy. I don't know what I would say, but
I haven't even been doing anything, actually. I haven't even been having any live streams or anything. Like, I've been really sick the last few weeks, kind of, and I just haven't felt like doing anything.
Yeah, I'm really under the weather right now. Dr. Kurt asks, is it what kind of slavery is depicted in the Bible, or is it does the Bible endorse slavery?
I think it's does the Bible condone slavery, I think, or something.
I think it's the Bible endorse slavery. It sounds like you're cutting out a little bit.
I've got the thumbnail already put up, so. Look, Kurt said he would debate on my channel. The CTF.
That'd be fun. Dr. Kurt's a very, very skilled debater.
That's up to Tavo, but yeah. Thank you. But I'm willing to moderate any debate anybody wants to debate.
Well, do you have questions for me too, Robin?
Yes, I come up here. I had the same question that I came with last week, or last time I was here. Of course, I think that the evidence supporting evolution, the theory of evolution, is just massive to the point to where I feel like anybody that denies that evolution happened is just doing an argument against it. And it just keeps getting more and more evidence for it and supporting it. It's like the foundation of biology. So without the Adam and Eve story, I still do not understand where original sin comes into this story and why we would need Jesus to die without original sin.
Yeah, I mean, those are two different questions. One is evolution, I would agree that I think you have to sort of admit that some kind of evolution is happening. From my perspective, if it's hard to really do biological science without evolution. I'm happy to admit that there are some gaps in what we know about evolution. There are some things that happen in ways that we don't understand, like we don't understand island dwarfism. We don't understand deep sea gigantism. We don't understand some of the rapid transitions between species that we observe that are probably a little too rapid. But I don't think those are, to me, questions for the biological sciences to resolve over time. Those aren't objections to the theory, and I definitely don't think we should throw it out wholesale. I also kind of like the direction that things were going like 10 years ago, which has kind of fallen out of favor a little bit recently, where we were more thinking about epigenetic evolution. In other words, like sort of looking at evolution of the proteome. That got really popular for a while, and I think it's less popular to talk about now, but I still like it. I thought it was a good direction for the sciences.
Well, I mean, I think, I know people don't accept evolution. I mean, like, I see people in the chat that say they don't accept evolution. And I understand that there are people who don't accept evolution, but I think evolution is a fact that is well demonstrated in the biology, and so, like, whether you accept it or not, like, I accept it because I see it, because I think it's been demonstrated, and I'm sure, like, Dr. Kurt would say that too. I think it's it's a fact that it is the only explanation that we have that fits all of our evidence. It's the only thing that explains. Nothing makes sense in biology except through evolution.
Well,
and so, like, but just like, even if you don't accept it, like, I mean, like, I just really, I can't worry about the people who don't accept it, because I'm not a biologist, so I can't prove evolution to people, especially people who won't even ever, like, you can show them 100 things of evidence of it, and they never ever accept it. It's like they is the argument for it. But if evolution is true, why did we need Jesus to die for the original sin of, and like, Catholics accept evolution. They see it as theistic evolution, but I still have never seen where that they say that without Adam and Eve, why we need salvation from original sin.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, just to close the topic of evolution, I don't think that's necessarily like a disqualifying belief for Christianity. In other words, if somebody comes up to me and they say, I believe in evolution and therefore I can't be a Christian, like, I would be like, wait, no, that's not even close to true. And I think it's really important to note that Christianity did have a very ancient linkage to the sciences. If you look at, like, Augustine of Hippo, Clement I, there were many other people who, in early Origin was another one, who in early Christianity all advocated for an understanding of science that theology should not surmount, and that was the thinking. And then things got more literalist in the 1600s with Martin Luther and the whole Protestant thing that happened. And then really when things changed was very, very recently. It was the Niagara Creed, which came about in around the year 1900. And leading up to the Niagara Creed was an investment of about $300 million by these two oil tycoons in the United States, Milton and Lyman Stewart were their names. And they put out these papers called the Fundamentalist Papers, and their whole goal was to endorse the verbal and plenary interpretation school of thought, which suggests that every part and every word of the Bible is literally true. So there was a much more literalist interpretation, but that's not the way Christianity formed initially.
I agree.
Christianity was formed with reverence for the sciences. And Augustine of Hippo, who's one of my ancestors in terms of my culture, my ethnicity, he's actually came from the same lineage that I came from, was very strident on this point. So, and then in 1979 there was the Chicago Statement on Biblical Inerrancy, and I feel like it's a very recent revelation that you have to choose between science and religion. And if you look between, like, the year 1 to the year 1700, like, many of the best scientists in the world were very theologically minded thinkers. There was Leibniz and Blaise Pascal and a lot of other people. So I kind of wish that we got back to the point of, like, to me, my theology informs my scientific pursuits. I look at the human body and I think, what an amazing structure, what an amazing work of art, and it gives me like sort of a feeling of warmth thinking about God, and it kind of motivates me to learn more about the human body. Now, that doesn't mean that God directly, like, pieced every cell together of every human body, but again, I think that's a very literal interpretation. Now, getting back to your question of original sin, again, my thinking is that, like many early Christians, including Philo of Alexandria, who was not a Christian himself, he was a Jew, but he was interpreting Old Testament scripture in a way that became a platform for Christianity in the School of Alexandria. And in large part, the School of Alexandria later became, a lot of those people became Christian. A lot of those School of Alexandria resources got contributed to the nascent Christianity movement. But the point is that Philo of Alexandria looked at the story of Adam and Eve, and he said, this is not a literal story. There was no literal Adam. There was no literal Eve. This is an allegory. And the way he determined that is he talked about, Cain and Abel killing each other. And then there were other people around at the time. So there must have been other civilizations. So it's not, so his whole point was, that was never meant to be taken as this is how humanity formed. It was this one person named Adam and this one woman named Eve. Now, I think the allegory serves a more broad moralistic purpose of explaining why humans are evil. We were talking about cats and mice earlier. A cat isn't immoral if it kills a mouse, because cats don't have theory of mind. So they might sort of understand it a little bit, but I don't think they are really consciously aware that mouse is suffering.
I think that the world is set up to where they have to kill things to eat, to survive. And so I don't see that as the evil. We don't have to do that. So that makes us have a different moral choice than an animal like that right there, I think.
And to me, the story of man's fall from the Garden of Eden is a story about the two things that gave us moral agency, and at the same time, kind of a moral ledger of the things that we do bad. One of those things is insight, so we understand, pain and suffering. The other thing is choice, right? So we have the capacity to make a choice to do one thing or do another thing. We can live in harmony with the environment, or we can live in ways that are more destructive. So to me, that's what it's all about. That's what the outcome of that story is. It's an allegory that shows why we're in a point where we can make moral decisions. Now, whenever someone talks about Jesus needed to die because Eve ate the apple, my point is, again, I think that Jesus offers forgiveness, but I don't know that I would say that Jesus, it was not God's plan for Jesus to die. I mean, God was aware of what would happen, but humans killed Jesus. God didn't incite anyone. God didn't go into the hearts of the Roman soldiers or the Jews at the time to command them to kill Jesus. It was entirely a human decision.
I mean, we could argue about it. We could discuss that all day, because I think that if I commit this from inside of a Christian, the Christian religion, that everything that happens is part of God's plan. So, I don't that's what when I grew up Christian, that's what I believe. So I would have never accepted that something happened that was not part of God's plan, because I think that there's nothing that ever happens that is not part of His plan, according to the Christianity that I was raised on, anyway. But
I agree with that. But I just, when a lot of times I'll have conversations with atheists, and they're like, why did Jesus have to die? Why did he have to have such a brutal death? And I'm like, whoa, that wasn't God saying, it was not like Jesus came and stabbed himself in front of everybody. It's the humans who killed Jesus. So it's not like, I don't know that you can blame that on God. I don't know. You can say it's God's fault that Jesus died a bloody death.
I think that the plan was that he, doing this from inside and internal critique, the plan was that he came here to sacrifice himself for forgiveness of our sins, right? I just want to, I'll get off here and let.
Well, on day 3, it makes an important observation. Foreknowledge doesn't equal causation, and that's really my point.
Yeah, but I think he made all the rules that he made the universe and set it up the way it's set up. And foreknowledge, and if you are all powerful and you have foreknowledge, then I think, if I set my child my toddler in a room with open electric wires, and I leave them unattended and they get shocked, is that not my cause? Am I not a cause that? So I don't. Because I foreknowledge that it could happen, doesn't mean that I'm not to blame for that.
Well, that's true, and that's negligence. But like, to me,
well, I mean, I kind of feel like that's what. But we can argue about this further. I feel like that's what God did with us too, like with Adam and Eve in that story. He told them that they were not to eat of that fruit. They didn't know good and bad yet. They hadn't learned the difference between good and evil, so they didn't know what it meant. They didn't understand what it meant to not do what God said. They didn't understand that was bad, and then it not only goes on to just Adam and Eve, but like every other human being that ever existed. And that makes no sense to me either. So that's like, so anyway, but that's all I wanted to ask about the evolution stuff. I will say that I've read a book. I'm reading a book right now. It's called The Bonobo and the Atheist. And it's
yeah. I think I've heard of this book actually. How are you liking it?
It's an argument about like how morality has came up out of our, our social species ancestors, and I think we see like social species have to have morality to be able to survive. I mean, because we are species that depend on each other, and bonobos actually, the females in bonobo tribes will actually help the other females give birth and stuff. So it's really some of the neatest stuff, I think. But I appreciate you answering my question, Tavo. I won't keep you up here. I know you got other people back there, and
you're asking fascinating questions, and I think we're scratching the surface of what could be a really great conversation. So I hope we chat again. I was just giving one more thing to think about in regards to the story of the death of Jesus. I think the Old Testament, if you're taking the Old Testament and the New Testament together, there is a model for sacrifice in the Old Testament that doesn't shed the blood of the son, and that's the sacrifice of Isaac, right? So the point of that whole story to me is laying down on the slab is what starts the covenant, So to me, I think if I were a Jew in first century Judea and I was thinking about killing Jesus, I'd be like, wait a second, why don't we not kill Jesus? Why don't we just say that the laying down on the slab is the, like, that should be that in other words, that story seems to be a very prescient hint that you don't actually need to take the life of the son, that you
I mean, I don't think they thought he was the son of God, though. And let me answer slave of Elijah. Okay, he says the ignorance of a baby isn't the same as a full-grown rational man being told not to do something. But Adam was not a full-grown rational man. He was born as a grown man. He was not. So, like, he had no experience that you would gain as you grew up from a child to a man. He was not born as a child. He was born as a full-grown man. And so there are no no experiences that you would have went through as you matured into manhood. And so I don't agree with that analogy of him.
Well, Robin, I think this could be the beginning of a great conversation.
All right.
Let's do a Talking with Tavo video where we just come up and we get to know you.
Yes.
I like having people on my channel just to present their arguments where it's not like, here's my counter argument. And I did that with Brooklyn Loon and a few other people. So I'm always happy to say a deconverted man came up and I was like, just present your arguments and tell me about your story. So I'd love to do that with you. And I think OE is next. So let me bring him on. Let me bring him on at the same time as you. And
my brother.
Hey, OE, you're up on the air with us.
Hey, it's so nice to see you, sister. Brother Tavo, it's so good to see you as well. I'm actually at work. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Yeah, good to see you.
Okay. Yeah, so sorry, so I got to keep it kind of quick, but just really quickly, I do want to say hello to my sister, Robin. Sounds like you're feeling a little bit better. Is that true?
A little bit. I'm not feeling real good, but I felt good enough to come up here for a minute and talk to Tavo.
Okay. Well, just keep rest and make sure you're getting plenty of liquids. You know the routine.
I just got a lot of stuff on my chest or something that's like choking me.
Well,
that's
Robin,
the worst.
Shoot me an email. I would agree. Yeah, stay away from refined sugars and too much carbohydrates when you're recovering from illness. Also.
All right, love y'all. Thank you.
I hope we chat again soon.
Yeah, I will.
All right, OE, what's up? How's it going?
It's going really well, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you just fine. And I did
My
send.
Bluetooth is acted up, so is it too loud? I'm talking into the phone directly here.
No, you're great. You're great. I did send on day 3 an email from you, and on day 3, let me know if you've responded. And I just haven't seen it yet. But if you want, if you email me back, and then I don't like giving out emails without like getting like definitive confirmation. But I think it should work out, and I'm super honored that you want me to host the debate.
Well, I think we should, because it came up on your channel. I think you're getting into the debate sphere yourself. I think you had a couple of good ones with Dr. Kurt, and I really enjoyed that. And it will help you get views. So, I think it'll be great for your audience and stuff. But like I said it before, I'm happy to do it wherever ultimately, as long as certain criteria are met. But I think your channel will be a perfect platform. I just wanted to touch on really quickly. I am at work, so I got to be kind of brief about this. I apologize for my brevity here, but the moral argument I find to be the biggest problem when it comes to, frankly, any organized religion, but Christianity for the purpose of this conversation. I think the young man who came up earlier very well articulated the one of the issues. It seems like he presented what I see to be a false dichotomy, that you have to be either all good or all bad. And I think that that's simply just not the case, that there are people, all human beings are going to do what we call good or bad, but good and bad are value judgments. That's always going to be subjective. So in order to determine that there is this God that establishes a criteria for what even needs to be forgiven, that has to be argued for, the existence of the God, then the morality of the God. And we have to argue it against something that we would consider to be a normative claim. And I just don't think that Christianity can do that. The other issue I think that we have here, when it comes to forgiveness, I'm of the mindset that forgiveness is not something that we do for other people. Forgiveness is explicitly about relieving yourself of pain and anger and harm and bad feelings, or whatever you want, negative energy, I guess would be how we put it. So when we forgive other people, that's what we're doing for ourselves. We're not doing them any favors either way, because forgiveness and justice are not necessary to work together. You do not need forgiveness for justice. Justice is a virtue. It requires fairness, and fairness is treating like cases alike. And forgiveness is not necessary for justice. So I feel like there's a lot of conflation going on there to why we would even need this forgiveness from this God, because that doesn't entail justice, does not entail forgiveness.
No, I understand that, but I think my point was there are situations, and if you have to go really soon, like I don't want to get too like, I'd rather you say everything that's on your mind, and then
I think I tried to unload it as quickly as possible. Sorry, I was kind of shotgun you with that, but yeah, feel free. Go ahead and articulate your objection. If I have to go, I have to go. But so far, I'm in it to win it.
Well, I think my point to Max was, which was a great conversation. I'm grateful to Max. And if we have time at the end for the whole group chat, we'll bring everybody back on. But my point,
he seemed like a very nice young man.
Very nice, yeah. And we've done some research together on CTF, so I'm eager to share that at some point. But yeah, my point was there are situations where we transgress what I think is morality. And we can't, it's not a question of like calling somebody up on the phone and apologizing, because there are the harm that we've done may be sort of generic harm to the world. It may be generic harm to other people, or maybe subjugation and destruction of other life forms that, we don't really think about as humans. Now, here's my question to you. You started off the statement by saying what's right and wrong is always going to be subjective. So that seems like that's at least a shift for you in terms of like what you started off with was a very objective, an objective ethics,
Yeah, I do believe that morality is, I still hold to objective morality, because morality, often people seem to get confused about this. Morality is not a goal. Morality is an action. What we ought do or ought not do. Those are action words, right? So like when we say morality as a goal, that's actually not the case. Morality obtains objectively because it's based on empathy and reason, which we are as a social species. We've evolved to be that way. The whole process, the ontology, is mind independent. Where we get the objective normative is after we've selected the goal of cooperation, which is paramount to our human nature, paramount to our survival. We are a social species. So it is to our human nature that we would, in fact, cooperate with each other. When we act against our human nature, that's when we're going to war with each other, fighting each other, stealing from each other, so on and so forth. And if we continue to do that, it's too much of if we have a habit of doing that, we won't survive. We would destroy ourselves by destroying each other. So our survival.
You have made the language of morality entirely anthropocentric, though.
Because it's a social contract among people. which is another issue about the veganism thing.
There's no moral issues that transgress from one species to another, because I don't think you would agree.
I don't think so.
I don't think you would agree with that. If you saw somebody hurting an animal, I think you would immediately be morally convicted. That's a bad thing that I'm
yeah, because it causes unnecessary harm. So there's no justification for just hurting other living things or damaging somebody's property, inanimate property. It all goes the same way. Even if nobody owned it, there's just no point in picking a flower that's just not doing anybody any harm because it affects the ecosystem. So there are selfish reasons why we wouldn't want to do that, because we live within an ecosystem. So veganism to me creates a net negative. I don't see it as actually being a moral decision whatsoever. I think that when you talk about animal suffering, nobody that's dead is suffering. So eating a dead animal is a non sequitur as to whether that animal is suffering or not. So you have to talk about how are the animals being treated when they're alive. And you can be against factory farming. You can be against factory farming without being a vegan, for example.
Well, that gets back to the question of, is it ever possible to have an animal, to kill it, that you can eat it, and do that in a humane way? To me, if you're murdering an animal to eat it, then that's not humane.
That's because you're importing the language of murder. We don't make social contracts with chimpanzees or lions. They would a lion will eat you if you're out in the jungle. That lion's not going to engage in a social contract with you.
Yeah, but again, here's the problem. You're defining your criteria for morality in a way that's anthropocentric, right? But you're admitting that there are moral transgressions that can be done to other species.
I'm saying that there are actions that just in and of themselves, actions can be harmful, unnecessarily harmful. So that could be something that we might consider to be immoral, but it's not because it's something about the other species. It's because the normative behavior of human beings. That's what morality is. It's a question about a social contract that we have with other people. We don't have a social contract with lions and tigers.
No, I understand that, but but you're admitting that harming another animal is morally harmful, right? So that's
any unnecessary harm is harmful by definition. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But that's inconsistent. But we harm things, and there's another criteria there that you're kind of sneaking in when you say unnecessary harm, right? But here's my
because
point.
harm is going to be subjective anyway. To like, what is the animal? Does the animal have a goal in mind, or is it acting just simply instinctive? We don't necessarily know. We don't have a way to judge that. We know that goals are subjective when it comes to human beings. Our goals are always subjective.
My point is that your rationalization that harming an animal is morally bad is not consistent with your framework that all morality is defined by human level social contracting.
Well, I don't see where there's a disconnect there, because just to go around harming things, first of all. Second of all, the issue of eating an animal is not harming the animal. You can have, so I know farmers personally who they treat their farm animals as good or better than most people treat their domestic pets. They live a much better life on a farm with the intention. Yeah, well, animals are going to die anyway. And there's a difference between how are you going to die? Are you going to take a pew-pew in the back of the head and feel no pain and it's instantly over after living a protected life? Or are you going to spend every minute of your life struggling to survive out in the wild? There's a huge difference there. The life that they're living is whether they're quote unquote suffering or not. So if you take really good care of an animal, you are alleviating their suffering.
Well, wait a second. Because what you're saying is it has a big problem with it, right? Because you're saying if I kill an animal, okay, in a way that produces no suffering, in other words, it's a very painless death, then I haven't committed any moral transgression, right? And I think that animal would agree with you, would disagree with you. And moreover, that's not the way our thought about killing works, right? If I kill a human, it's not like it's mitigated because I didn't do any like.
Yeah, but you keep wanting to hijack humans and animals into the same social contract. It's not the same, first of all. Second of all, if you care for that animal and you alleviate the suffering for the animal, right, then you're not doing an injustice.
Well, but my point is, if your only grounding of morality is the human level social contract, then the problem is that you have the issue of the fact that we harm animals, and you would probably see harm to animals as morally repugnant, and that hangs uncomfortably with your criteria of human level social contract as the definition of what is morally right or wrong.
Because I don't think so. Because I think that when you say, okay, well, why is a person harming an animal? So we have to come to an agreement on what we're even talking about, right? So if somebody goes around and kicks puppies, right, we would say, okay, why would a human being go around and kick puppies? We would all agree that person lacks empathy and lacks the ability to understand the emotions, a visceral reaction that other human beings are going to have by that action. I mean, it entails so many things that actually are linked to the social contract. And we would also say that person does not have a fully functioning or healthy mindset, right?
Well,
to just go around and do this thing to puppies.
But by your definition, though, it's if I shoot, this is a horrific example, okay? But by your definition, it doesn't seem like I've committed any moral transgression if I shoot a puppy with a tranquilizer dart and then I kick it to death, right? By your level, there's no rule in your morality that says that I shouldn't do that.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure. That seems a little bit abstract. I'd have to think about that, to be honest with you, because if the puppy's not suffering, like, what is your goal? Well, just to see if you could get away with kicking a puppy? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me logically. I'm trying to be as fair as possible, but there are going to be moral questions that I don't have answers to. But let me give you an example for where I would say that moral facts obtain.
Because there are definitely people who get their kicks off of torturing animals, right? It's repugnant when that happens, but it is a thing that happens. There are people who go around torturing animals, and
yeah, they do. And we actually consider that to be a symptom of a mental disorder that has to link to antisocial personality disorder, sycophants, or whatever it might be. Severe mental disorders, that behavior is linked to. But we do not link eating animals to that same type of disorder.
Well, let's move on, because I think you wanted to get to another point, but I did want to circle back.
Yeah, just really quick. So to see how I obtain these true moral facts. So let's take 10 people and they agree to cooperate. Because I mentioned cooperation is a social species, right? So they agree to cooperate, so definitionally, among those 10 people, there would be no war, there'd be no murder, there'd be no stealing, no nothing, because they have agreed. The axiomatic principle is they're cooperating. If we expand that to 100 people, it becomes more complex as to how to get them to cooperate. But if we agree that the fundamental principle remains the same of cooperation, the logic holds up. No wars, no stealing, no coercion, blah, blah, blah. If we said every single human being on the planet is in fact going to cooperate, we would literally eliminate war. We would eliminate theft. We would eliminate coercion. Everything would just disappear instantly. It would solve all the problems, because it is a true fact that cooperation means you would not steal from people you're cooperating with.
Yeah, but there's another problem, right? This is all based on the benefits. Let's just take animals out of the equation. Let's say you're on a planet that only has intelligent humans on it, right?
Sure.
Let's say we're all vegetarians on this planet. So there's still another problem. Your justification of the social contract is the benefits that we reap from engaging in the social contract, right? And
it is a necessary part of our nature as being a social species.
Okay, so there's a justification for that social contract, right? There's a criteria on which it's justified. So it makes our lives better, eliminates war.
We are genetically predisposition. We have a genetic predisposition to this cooperation. It's biologically, it's intrinsic to our nature as a social species.
I don't think you would argue that makes it good, right? That's not what
again, good and bad is a value judgment. You must so the hypothetical imperative, the conditional imperative, gets you to the ought. If I have this goal, so if a surgeon wants to perform a successful surgery, they ought to sterilize their equipment. This follows logically. So if you want to cooperate with me, you ought not steal from me. That follows logically.
Let me get to the one hole in your theory, because this to me seems like there's still an obvious gap here. If I'm living under the social contract, okay, and my neighbor has, something that I want, and I can steal it and get away with it, what is the moral compulsion that I should not steal it?
Well, this gets into the objective versus subjective moral question. And when I'm really, I would say that whether you think morality is objective, subjective, or I think you take the emotivist view. Are you still holding that position that your morals are just your emotional reaction response to something? The non-cognitivist view? Because none of those three views necessitate a God or forgiveness, which is really what I wanted to talk about. Because forget whether you think morality is objective or subjective. Let's talk about why would we need forgiveness from this God? Why do you think that we're all bad? How can you justify this judgment that there's this objective good and bad, when what we see demonstrated is only comes to us through the text, and the texts are what we would consider to be immoral, unless you want to take the apologetic view and say, oh yes, well, slavery is okay when God does it. Having Saul kill women and children is okay when God does it. Dashing babies' heads against rocks is okay when God does it. Drowning babies is okay when God. It becomes completely removed from what human beings would say, whether you're an objectivist, a moral realist, a moral anti-realist, or an emotivist. All three positions would say, oh my God, all those behaviors are wholly, entirely immoral. So you have to start arguing for these things that are just disconnected from what the normative claim for morality would be.
Yeah. But there are still big problems with the moral standard that you set up. And now we're kind of switching to a different topic, which I'm happy to do. But I feel like
I think the topic should be why would we think that this God character is the moral what would I say, the barometer? Maybe that may not be the best word.
Okay.
What are we gauging morality against if we can't rely on our own normative, our own personal human experience of how we want to be treated, this reciprocity thing, that we want to be treated a certain way, we don't want to be treated a certain way. You know what I'm saying? So
it's not an either or, right? It's not that like you lose your human standards of behaving nicely to each other if you believe in a God, right? It's not one or the other.
No, I didn't say you did.
Yeah,
I didn't say. Okay. I'm just asking for the justification for this need for forgiveness.
And the justification is in the two things that I gave you during our debate. Number one, we know that moral thoughtfulness scales up with intelligence, right? We look at rats, we see that they have they have a lower concept of morality. We look at cats and see that they have some concept of suffering, but not much of a concept of morality. We can look at ants and see that they have zero concept of morality, although they're very social and they have a social contract with other ants, right? You wouldn't call an ant a moral species, right? So we know that morality scales up with intelligence, okay? And humans can look at all the suffering in the world and sort of have a gauge of that suffering because we have theory of mind, right? But my argument to you that I gave, which I think you sort of admitted was correct at the time, is we don't know that humans are at the apogee of intelligence, right? So theoretically, if there's a knob on the back of my head that turns up my intelligence and I turn that up all the way to infinity, then I ought to be capable of higher level moral thinking. I ought to be able to see morality in a much more nuanced perspective from the way we see it. The analogy is this. Let's say there's an anthill, okay? And let's say I destroy that anthill. Now, from the ants' perspective, I'm doing something that's very harmful. You might even say that if those ants had sentience, they would consider my elimination of their village to be a morally improper, immoral act. It might even say it's an evil act. But they don't understand my greater goals. Like, what if they're an invasive species, and that's the reason why they need to be wiped out? What if there's the reason why they get flooded and their village gets destroyed is because I'm trying to prevent a fire from spreading, right? So the problem is the ant doesn't have like these insights, right? And there's no way that you know that we are not somewhere on that ladder with the ants. And we're just very low down that we can't see the consequences on a higher level, right? So you're saying, what is my justification for saying that an omniscient being, okay, would be able to make superior moral decisions? So the first one is a rule that you've already agreed with, which there's nothing to show that humans are at the apogee of intelligence, right? The second reason is what I also gave you in the conversation, that as we talked about, if you are observing a universe, a moral system, and there are conscious entities, it's only the omniscient entity with respect to that system who can truly judge the moral weight of any action, right? Because you have to know of all the mindsets, all the internal emotional states of every single conscious character at play in that system. And only when you have all that information can you make a decision that's moral. So those are my two reasons why I think if you had an omniscient entity in that situation, then it becomes it's no longer about if they have a stance dependent or a stance independent understanding of the system itself. It's about they have a stance universal perspective. So those are the two reasons.
Well, I don't think stance dependence. I don't think we need to take the stance dependence unless we're talking about ontology. We can go with true facts. We can go with true facts. Yeah, but here's the thing, though. Just because it's possible that human beings could,
they just bring it home and land the plane so that people in the chat can get the conversation.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
My point is this: if there is an omniscient entity, that means that they have a higher degree of moral insight than I would have being a conscious participant in the system. Those are the two reasons why.
But none of that's been demonstrated is my first issue. The second issue is so we would basically, you would have to be making the claim that we would then be able to obtain these true moral facts at some point, even if the source was coming from this omniscient being. And I don't concede that.
No. I don't think that's a claim that I have to make at all. The only thing that I have to show is an extrapolation that moral insightfulness tends to scale up with higher levels of intelligence. And theoretically, if there's something more intelligent than us, then it ought to be able to have moral insightfulness. Now, I admit that that's an extrapolation, but it seems like a reasoned one.
But again, this doesn't get us to the primary question of why ought we, if we have no way to obtain these true moral facts that you're talking about, then it's irrelevant because our behavior is going to be such that we need a normative position at some point. So what are we basing our behavior on until these true moral facts become revealed? And the issue is that you're setting yourself up with what religion does.
Why is that necessary? Because to me, my argument is not anything about that. My argument is, if there is an omniscient entity with respect to our universe, then that omniscient entity would have a higher, more privileged perspective epistemologically to understand moral consequences and the morality of actions.
Yes, but if I use your logic, and I say, okay, let's take Tavo's position here. So that moral entity says, you know what, the best thing for people to do in my omniscience is to actually destroy every baby immediately, so it goes right to heaven and doesn't experience any suffering. And then you would have to say, well, hey, they know better, so it's time to start off and whacking babies left and right.
Well, that's not a claim that I'm making, though.
No, it would be a true moral fact. And if I take your argument, unless I'm misunderstanding something, that if this omniscient being said, if this omniscient being declared, right, in its omniscience said that whacking babies right away is the best thing you can do morally because you prevent them from experiencing any suffering in the world. Right, then the moral thing to do in your world would be to just whack these babies left and right.
Absolutely not my argument at all. Right, and here's why it's not my argument. You're trying to put this into the standard of like, here's how that omniscient entity would explain things to us. But my point is not that. My point is that our ability to.
I didn't say. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I just. Your argument only works if an omniscient entity has to destroy all babies to create a moral outcome. Which
yes, and your argument only works if this it works with your argument. Yeah, exactly. If you're moral being that knows these true facts, and we're creating hypotheticals now, things that are just logically possible. Is it logically possible that there's this super being, this invisible wizard that lives up in the sky, that's omniscient, that would have a higher level of understanding of what morality actually is? You could make that claim, and I would agree with you. There's no logical contradictions. But if I embrace that claim, then everything's on the table. Every action is on the table to be considered good at that point. We have no epistemic way of judging in your worldview what actually is good or not. Our empathy doesn't work anymore. Our reasoning doesn't work anymore because you're saying we haven't reached the epitome of knowledge or epitome of empathy or epitome of whatever.
Well, we have no way in your system of knowing if it's morally good or not. I would argue.
We do. It's called empathy and reason. It's called cooperation. Okay. I mentioned this several times. That we're a social species. We know what cooperation looks like by definition.
Okay. What if there's two societies that conflict with each other and they both have social
They're not cooperating with each other. By definition, they're not cooperating with each other. And if they would cooperate with each other, then they would eliminate the conflict between the two of them.
But there's a social contract within two groups. One group is larger than the other, okay? And each group agrees with their own internal social contract that they need to destroy the other group. So they go to war.
That's what we see all the time happening. Yeah, we see it happening all the time right now. The Axis powers from the Allies, right? We saw two conflicting worldviews, and they fought a war.
There's still empathy. There's in-group empathy.
There is, but here's the thing, though. You're strawmanning my position. My position is cooperation. If those two groups would cooperate with each other as well as just within their own in-group, none of what you're saying would be happening anymore. It would be instantly taken care of. There wouldn't be any war. There wouldn't be any problem between the two groups.
But why can you not extend that analysis to animals? Right? You could say, well, we should be cooperating.
Because, as I've stated, I don't accept that animals are a part of our social contract. You'll have to argue that for me. And I think that veganism demonstrated has been actually leads to more harm than good, because of the way that vegans aren't solving any of the world's problems. They don't care about ecosystems. But and again, vegan is a very broad term, right? But many of the vegans that I've talked to think that we should be wiping out all carnivorous animals. They don't care about how many trees we cut down to grow all these vegetables. They don't care about, I said, they do not care about the biosphere or the ecosystems. They only care about not eating animals. And they don't even care and they're not even consistent with that, because some vegans will feed fish to their cats. So it's just completely, like I said, the whole thing is incoherent. But what the one consistency they do have is they belittle and berate the non-vegans.
And I'm just okay. And let me dial back my argument then, because I'm not saying all vegan arguments that any vegan has ever held is justified, right? And I would agree with you if there's a vegan out there who's like, and we should get on to Walter too, and if there's a few other people, but I would agree with you. I don't think every argument by every vegan is justified. And if the argument is we have to destroy all animals that aren't on purely vegetarian diets, then I agree with you. That's a flawed. I've never made that argument. I never would make that argument. But my point to you is this: there's number one, the problem of group dynamics with your understanding of cooperation. Number two, there's the problem of its applicability to the universe around us, right? It doesn't apply to the ecosystem at all. It doesn't apply to any animals around us. And at least I think animals are capable of suffering, and therefore they're capable of being at least moral objects in terms of the fact that if we behave badly towards them, we can induce suffering, and that's a bad thing.
Well, I'm going to let you go. I love our conversations, but I will push back by saying this. I actually think that living intentionally is to our best interest and is part of cooperation. Taking care of the planet is actually part of this cooperation I'm talking about. It's not just what you and I agree to do, but it's cooperation among all people and living intentionally with the planet itself, because by taking care of the planet, we are providing a better environment for everybody and thus reducing harm. So I think that taking care of animals feeds into this element of cooperation, that we have a selfish motive, selfish to our own nature, which is being a social species. We want to protect our children and give them a better life in the future than what we had, as part of our nature, to make sure they're protected and cared for, that we leave them with something. And by taking care of the planet and the ecosystem, which is paramount to taking care of the planet, living intentionally is how I would respond to that.
And I would agree with you, but what you just said is it's based on a selfish motive, and therein lies the problem. Because if your only level of morality is selfishness, then you can violate the social contract whenever it serves your best interest to a high
No, we need to be careful with how we're phrasing selfishness, because we do need to, because altruism makes no sense. If I just, it becomes incoherent, because I can help more people if I take care of myself. Like if a plane is crashing, the very first air mask you should put on, the face mask you should put on, is your own, because then you're in a position to help more people get their face mask on. If you try to get the guys next to your face mask on, you'll probably pass out and be able to help maybe not even one person. We have to take care of ourselves. The key is, and this is what I love Buddhism so much for, even though I'm not a religious person, secular Buddhism teaches us about this middle way, understanding how to balance the ego. If we didn't have an ego, we wouldn't know what mouth to put the fork in, right? We have to, for our own survival, have a certain amount of quote unquote selfishness. But that word gets used with a negative connotation. And I think, to be fair, we should, in a future conversation, parse out egoism and figure out, where do we lie with that? Because I think that altruism is incoherent as a position to hold. I don't think it is an ethical position to, under most circumstances anyway, to just die or give up on everything. To
all you're left with is sort of more informed, less myopic self-interest, right? And if I can make a decision that serves my self-interest to a better degree than the social contract, and it doesn't violate the social contract, and I also don't get detected, then it seems like there's no justification for why I shouldn't do that.
I think that self-respect is paramount to your own well-being, though. And if you're just trying to get away with something and hope you don't get caught, I don't think you can actually respect yourself because you know better. And I think that actually produces a level of harm to yourself. I'd have to try and figure out how to really articulate that better. And I am trying to be respectful of your other callers. And I don't want to. We could go on. You and I have such great conversations. We could probably talk for 2 hours about this. But I do love you, brother, and I do want the best for you. And I will tell you and your listeners, self-respect, respect for others, and respect for the planet. These are the bricks that we use to pave the road that leads us to the good life we want to live. All right.
Couldn't agree more. I'll tag you in this video, and I'll post a link to our other conversation that we had on your channel.
Always love your time, brother, and I love your energy, and I just wish the best for you and everyone else. All right. Thank you.
Likewise. Yeah. Check out the Objective Ethics channel, and good to see you. All right. Let's go to Walter and bring him up on the stage. Walter, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate your conversations.
Oh, good to see you, Walter. Yeah, thanks for joining.
So coming from a Christian perspective, I have a two-part question. According to Scripture as a whole, what principles should govern a Christian's association with unbelievers? And where does Scripture distinguish between acceptable association and association that should be avoided? I had time to write it down while I was backstage, so it sounds kind of written down, doesn't it? But that's the question.
It's a good question. I don't know where I don't know where the line is. I will say that we live in a world right now where we are. So just let me kind of steel man your question. You're asking me, to what degree should Christians associate with non-Christians, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, let me put it to you this way. I don't know that I have a super good answer to that, but I feel like we are living in a time where everyone is erring so much on the side of cancel culture. If somebody disagrees with me, I need to remove them from my sphere of influence. I need to remove them from my life, and I need to thicken the walls of my own echo chamber, you know? So I really try to err on the side of embracing people who disagree with me. But you know, that's a hard question. I mean, there's one person that I blocked from this channel, and it was because they were threatening other people in the comment section. So, and I really struggle with that. And I still actually, as you can tell probably from my tone, I still really feel bad about that from time to time. So I don't know that I know a good rubric for that. Are you, I mean, I could ask another Christian and see what they say. I mean,
So
Faith from Facts here. Do you want to hop up, Faith? Let me get Faith from Facts, because he may have a better answer from this. But I would argue that we should associate as much as we can with non-Christians, and I really value the friendships that I have, even with people who I really, really disagree with about a lot of things.
Does that come from Scripture or from your personal opinion? Just curious.
I mean, I think it comes from the example of Jesus in Scripture. I can't point out a specific verse that it comes from, but I feel like Jesus eating with the, you know, I think, you know, Adrian Belgrave says, you know, we must love everyone as we must love our neighbors as we love ourselves. I think that's a really good rubric for that. I think, you know, Jesus by example is, you know, engaging with the people who are not, who are not looked at as the best moral exemplars of civilization. I think that's a really good example for us. Let me bring up Faith from Facts and see if he has any thoughts on this, because I've been at this for about an hour 45 minutes. I'm getting a little bit tired. I'm a little bit under the weather. But Faith from Facts, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah. So I think one of the useful images that I have in my head when it comes to how I interact with people who aren't Christians is this idea of you have a boat in the water, but you don't have water in the boat, right? And what that means is that we see Jesus constantly talking to tax collectors. We see him talking to prostitutes. He's like going to these people's houses and having meals with them and being in their social circle, as it were, right? But what we don't see is Jesus kind of taking on their perspective and their way of life, if that makes sense.
Do we really see in Scripture him being in their social circles? I mean, it seems that he teaches his message and moves along. He's not hanging out with these people. And,
Walter, could I ask for more context of your question? Like, is there a specific situation that maybe we could have more light on, or a specific any is there like more specifics that you can tell us about?
There are well, this is coming from me.
Macintosh Pro adds that Jesus came for the sick, not for the perfect. Adrian says Jesus Christ came to save the sinner.
He did, and I think that's what we're called to do. We're called to plant the seed and let God give the growth, but not to be unequally yoked, not to participate in the lifestyles of those who are unbelievers.
Yeah, so I think that there are real warnings against like becoming like them, if that makes sense. So you've got 1 Corinthians 15:33, be not deceived, evil communications corrupt good manners. Bad company corrupts. Paul warns against being unequally yoked together with unbelievers. I think specifically in that context, it's marriage, right? There are certain things that we're getting deeply into deeply into it with somebody. You're taking on what they're doing, what they're doing. Okay. But it also, has a posture towards the world of so for example, the Matthew 9:12, if you're healthy, you don't need a doctor, but people that are sick, right? And we are called to go out to these sick people and to minister to them and to help heal them, right?
Right.
There's also these images of we are the salt of the earth, right? We are the leaven. So what leaven does is it doesn't help bread by being separate from the bread. It helps the bread by being deeply intermixed with it, right? And so when we take kind of everything together, like there's this picture in John 17, okay? And I'm trying to look it up while I'm talking to you.
While you're looking it up, I guess I had another thought on this question, which is that I do worry for the Christians with whom I am in their midst, who are more on the side of saying, we are on a higher moral plateau, a higher moral plane than these other people, so we need to help them from a perspective of magnanimity, right? I would always say that humility is always the answer, right? If and we are, and Jesus says, don't tell somebody, about the splinter in their eye if there's a big plank of wood in your own eye. And I think the point is that we are all walking around with planks of wood in our own eyes. And that's the thing we should be talking about. And that's the thing that we should be engaging with. And we should be engaging with our own, like I on this channel am often guilty of not being transparent enough about my own transgressions, my own need for forgiveness, the things that I myself have done wrong. And, and I talked a little bit about that today, but I would always argue that there's harm in moral self-licensing. And if you say like, I'm the good person and this person is the bad person, and I need to help them out of being an effort to be more magnanimous, I think that's flawed, because that only enhances, strengthens, and hardens your own moral self-righteousness and your own moral self-licensing. And we know that those things can be harmful.
Right. No, and I'd also agree with that point. Kind of the perspective that I'm taking it at, though, is how should we contact the world, if that makes sense? And I think you make a really good point there, Tavo. Anyway, John 17:15 talks about this. I'm not asking that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. Okay, and what I feel like is being said here is that we need to be in the world. We need to be in contact with the world, right? Like, I love monks. I think they're great people and everything. But what happens is that they take themselves out of the world. And so they're no longer able to help it as well, right? And what God wants is for you to be in the world, but for you not to take on the bad habits of the world. Does that make sense?
Partially, yeah. We have to be in the world, but we are not to be of the world.
Exactly.
Adrian, or McTime makes this point to Adrian. Jesus' supposed life and death changes nothing besides talk, and Jesus and people always just talk, no action. If it helps, McTime, I really want to underscore this. This channel is only a small part of what I do. I do work hard to raise money for charities. I raised about $300,000 over the last 5 years or so for some nonprofits that I work with. It's interesting to think about, what did Jesus change? He obviously changed many things in Judea. He obviously changed many things for the Jews. And the repercussions of Christianity were really felt sociologically, starting with the Christians. For instance, there were many barbaric practices like infant exposure that were obliterated because of the rise of Christianity. Now, I think the ethics of Christianity have gone farther than the Christian community, and those rules aren't exactly the same. But Justin Martyr made the case that one of the most persuasive arguments for Christianity is the moral acts of the Christians in the world. That's not a criticism or a denial of what you are saying. I think what you're saying is, look in the world, Christians aren't doing that much good work. They're talking about being good, but they don't actually work on being good. I've made a few times the point that I'll make, and I'll make it again here, that Christians do volunteer more than atheistic counterparts across the political spectrum for a number of secular causes, in addition to just Christian causes. And I also will make the argument that Christians do donate more to charity as well. That's not to say that Christians are doing enough, and that's not to say that Christians don't talk more than they act. But I think those are really important points. Shipping It Live says also, hospitals, orphanages, homeless shelters. That's a good point too. The modern hospital does in large degree owe its inception to the practice in Christianity of creating homes for people who were refractorily ill and indigent. Orphanages definitely grew out of Christian practices, but I think your point, McTime, is or MC Time is really on point, which is Christians aren't doing enough, and we need to do more. I think that's where your point has a lot of rhetorical power and resonance with me personally, anyways. All right, let's get back to the question on hand.
In 1 Corinthians 5, Paul is talking about within the church, sexual immorality within the church. That's the main topic here. And when you get down to verse 12, he says, "For what have I to do with judging outsiders?" Right? Because he's telling you, I'm writing to you not to associate with any so-called brother if he is sexually immoral or greedy and all that stuff. That's a brother. That's someone within the church. And he says, "For what have I to do with judging outsiders?" So we're to judge within the church. Are you not to judge those who are within the church? First, the rest. Anyway, but then and then it goes on. But those who are outside, God will judge. Remove the wicked man from among yourselves.
Right.
Right. So if we are to remove a brother who is sexually immoral or whatever those other things were listed there, idolaters, swindlers, greedy, we're to remove them, and cut off that association. How much more should we not be associated with those who are already outside the church?
Right. So here's the thing, though. This is a matter of somebody who claims to be upholding the ethics of Christ, but is not, right? And to remove him from the church. Right. But in these very same verses, okay, we're talking about judging this person. Okay.
Right.
It is also saying, hey, I'm not going to judge those who are outside of the church. Right. God judges is people who are outside of the church. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to do, and this is me kind of interpolating here from other verses, but what my job is with them is to be the salt, light, and the leaven, right? And I do my job of being the salt, light, and the leaven. God judges is them. I don't have to worry about that, okay? But what we have to do is that we have to expel the wicked man from the church. If that makes sense? Yeah. So saying not to associate with them, it's talking about somebody who in the church who is immoral. Right.
We're getting close. We're getting close to 2 hours. So let's do this. Let's open up the panel just for the last 20 or 30 minutes or so, if that's okay. Because I think we won't get to everybody otherwise. So I'll bring up Odin, I Am Batman, and I'll bring up BBN, and Max is still here. Max, if you're still here, you're welcome to hop on. And if there's anyone else who wants to come up, I'll bring you up as soon as people drop off. At the moment, that takes care of everybody who's in the queue, and that way we can get everyone to have a chance to have their voice heard at least a little bit. I Am Batman is Odin, if you didn't know that, by the way.
Well, I just have a couple of short things to say, and I can back off.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we can hear everybody. Yeah, but go ahead, Walter.
Yeah. One, you were talking about cancel culture. And so I would like to ask, are you seeing that within the church or from those without the church?
Oh gosh, I feel like these days I see it on all sides of the political spectrum.
So are those people that are saying they're within the church, are they just the so-called ones that are in the church, or are they actually within the church? If that's their normal behavior, it seems it's pretty obvious they're not within the church.
Well, so yes. So what you have the idea that there are people who say to Jesus on the final day, "Lord, Lord, did we not do great things in your name?" Which indicates that they're in the church. But then Jesus says to him, "Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. I never knew you." right? Which indicates that they're not a part of the final church, as it were. And basically what this is saying is, if somebody's showing those marks of being somebody who is immoral or greedy or a drunkard or whatever, okay, you remove them from the church so that they know, that, you know, that this is not the path that leads to heaven, shall we say.
Yeah, there was a scripture Paul wrote where he turned over two guys to Satan. He's like, I can't do it. Turn them over to Satan and let them learn, or however it was put. I don't know. The only other thing I want to say is the reason this came up, you asked me that and I didn't get the answer, Tavo, was the kind of the main reason this has come up for me is I've only been in the Bible just at 2 years. I've only been within the church less than a year. And the more I study the Bible, the more it seems that this is probably it may be one of the biggest problems within the church, that we have become too lax on things like this and given into society, given into culture, what culture wants rather than what God actually teaches. And the more I get into the scriptures and learn the word of God, the scarier the world looks.
Well, I mean, I agree with that. First of all, just to resonate with what you're saying, the time frame is actually pretty similar to my own time frame. I would say I've probably been an atheist for, I wanted to say 2 years, but maybe it's been more like 2.5, 3 years. So I'm sorry. I mean, I've been an atheist almost my entire life up until about 2.5 or 3 years ago. So I'm in the same time frame as you, at least. But yeah, I mean, I agree. It's the more I look around at the world, the more scary it is to me. I mean, I don't know that detaching from it is the right way to
no, not detaching from it at all. We can't do that. I was actually talking to a guy the other day. He was talking about the idea he was getting at was like a commune, creating a Christian commune community. He was talking about like the Amish and things like that. And I was telling him, no, you can't do that. For one, you can't remove yourself from society. You wouldn't make it. There have been attempts done at least all throughout the United States, I know of, and I assume all over the world, and they just don't make it. But then what you're doing is taking your lamp, your light, and you're hiding it under the bed. You're not, if you're
that's well
tucking
said.
yourself
That's well
away,
said. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, then you're not out there shining that light where it needs to be shown and bringing people to God. So yeah, I don't think at all that there needs to be any. I don't know. See, I think that's part of the problem. Society seems to think at it as a type of arrogance or something on the part of the believer. But I mean, I've seen the world for the past 54 years, I think, and the world hasn't changed to me, basically, as far as morality and whatnot. But I'm seeing I'm learning more about what God actually desires, which is changing the lens through which I see the world, I guess.
Well, let me resonate with that as well, because I think that Justin Martyr made a really good case for Christianity, and it's a case that we've forgotten. In all our enthusiasm to do apologetical discourse, we sort of lose sight of the fact that the best argument is the way we care for the world, the way we care for those who are less fortunate, and the way we serve others in our communities. I think that's maybe one of the best arguments, and it's one of the most overlooked ones, and that's definitely a place where we could all put in more effort.
Yeah, I think that's part of serving God. So yeah, I would agree with that. As long as you've got God first, you're doing it for God, not just trying to do it for the world or do it for culture, or do it for society. As long as your motivation.
I can't tell you where the fine line is to say like where you're being too much influenced by the sins that are around you, but I would say that there are many church communities where that's just as likely to happen.
Absolutely.
If I can give perhaps an example from my own life, I do LARPing, And one of the things, and there was this specific game, we were playing werewolves who were powered by their rage. And so it was a very fun game. I still like the system. But one of the things that I noticed is that whenever I came back from that LARP, I was a little bit more of an angry person than I was before I left for it, right? Sure. And for me, that meant that I had to leave that kind of group that I found to be kind of fun because it was affecting me in a way that I really didn't like, right? And I think that's the sort of thing that when we're interacting with the world, we have to be on the watch for, is when we start becoming like the people that we're trying to be a light to.
Right. And I'll just, after this, I'll be done because I'm taking up too much time. But on that, regarding the LARPing and how it made you feel, or how your attitude and feelings changed pre and post, did you give thought to how the act you were participating in was glorifying God?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Or the intent to that? Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. So a lot of like my mom, great, wonderful Christian woman. She does not like D&D, and I love D&D, you know. And so I've had to think a lot about what it means. And what I've found is that what you pretend to be, you become. And so I've tried to create more characters who are people that I want to become and want to be like.
That's wonderful.
Well, that's inspirational.
Yes.
Just a reminder, people. Please click the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. That really does help us. This has been a wonderfully well-viewed video. So just hope that people subscribe to the channel. We're getting close to 1,000 subs. I want to thank Captain Skeleton for being really patient. We'll get you up here as soon as we can. I also want to thank the people who are in the chat who are really having a great conversation. MC Time or McTime, I hope we have a conversation someday. I really mean that sincerely. Kelly, it'd be great to chat with you as well. Again, I do this every single Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So, and it's good to see LA Apologetics, Judd, Zara, everybody else, McTime, Adrian, who came up on day 3. So I would just, I'm grateful that you all are here. And if you haven't joined this conversation, please feel free to come up. Again, McTime, Kelly, you're also welcome to email me if you ever have any questions, or if I could ever provide any evidence, or if there's anything you want to go into deeper about. All right, well, we got everybody in the chat, so let's bring other people in. We'll get Captain Skeleton up here as soon as we can. We only have about 24 minutes left.
But, I can drop out if you want to bring someone else in, because I talked to you.
Yeah, I'm going to drop out too and listen in the back. Tavo, thank you for having me on, and thank you all for who participated.
Walter, really, I'm so glad that you came up. Thanks for chatting with me, Walter. I hope we chat again.
Don't leave yet.
You're asking a really hard question. Oh, go ahead. I think somebody wants to say more stuff to you, Walter.
Okay.
Yeah. So Walter, to answer your question from earlier, I don't think it has to be as complicated as a response, and I think it's a great question. But the two things you can hang on is love the Lord your God. I'm sure you know that, right? And to love your neighbor as yourself. And think about what is it that you would want to do that is loving towards your neighbor. Mind you, your neighbor is not just your Christian brothers, it's everyone, even your enemies and frenemies, right? And so your association to them, as long as they aren't pigs where you're throwing pearls at them, is to maintain the relationship so you can give them the gospel, because you understand that by nature of you accepting the gospel, right, you know what you will receive as a result of accepting the gospel. And so it would be the loving thing to share that good message so other people can receive what you received from accepting the gospel.
Right, I agree with that. I think people just tend to take it too far. The example I used with a guy at church the other day was he likes to play golf. Well, he plays with a bunch of guys who are not believers. They go out and spit, cuss, drink beer, and talk about their wives and stuff every time they go out. Well, he just continues to go. He said, yes, he has shared the gospel with them, but he continues to go and participate in this week after week after week. And I don't think that's what God, I'm not getting from the scriptures, that's what God wants. I think he wants us to plant that seed and allow him to give the growth. And we would continue on planting seeds wherever we go. But if we continue staying in a stagnant situation, we're not planting more seeds. We're just kind of hanging out.
I mean, I understand to a certain extent. I mean, every soul is important, and I don't. I think that if it is necessary, you probably need to give that particular person, who is a Christian, by the way, some extra attention considering his circumstance as a Christian. But if it's a situation where he's choosing to spend more time in essentially, being a guy, older guy, talking about his problems and stuff like that with other older guys, that's a part of the process. But as long as he's not drinking, going into drunkenness, he's not committing adultery, as long as he's not doing those things, he's kind of well in his rights. A matter of fact, one of the circumstances in the Bible that I would use is when Paul is talking to the Greeks, and he goes up to this pillar. There's an interesting history behind that particular those three pillars, by the way. When he goes up to the pillar and he talks to them about this unknown God, and he says, this unknown God that you worship, I'm letting him known to you right now. And he engages in in my opinion, some beautiful philosophy to justify that position, right? So the interaction is important. The time you take is important. But as long as someone doesn't end up committing sin, right, which is basically being of the world while conveying the message or trying to get someone to come to Christ, then I think they're good. You should take your time, because some people, all they need is a little bit of time. Some people don't need any much time. You just plant the seed and you go away. Some people, you got to make sure, you got to work that soil sometimes. Get it to where the seed would land. And, that's how you kind of meet people where they're at, is putting in the time and effort.
I can understand where you're coming from, but I also think you have to look at it from the contrasting perspective where the other guy is also, that's what he's doing. He's tilling the soil with you, and I think that's why there's so many warnings. And I don't remember the passages, but Jesus, was warning about the leaven of the Pharisees, and a little leaven leavens the whole loaf. And I think if you're the little leaven jumping into a loaf of big leaven, your little leaven's probably going to get overrun.
These are hard questions, Walter.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an easy answer. Walter, stay in the chat because I think people want to talk to you too. I know Captain Skeleton wants to hop up at some point too. We've only got about 18 minutes left or so. I kind of want to open it up to the other people who haven't had a chance to say much. Like, I know BBN hasn't said anything yet.
I've just been waiting for my time.
Yeah. And BBN, I do owe you a better conversation. I'm happy to if you email me, I'll happily book some time with you if you ever want, because I feel like you've hopped up here a few times and you've been shortchanged pretty much every time. And Walter, I think you hopped off, Walter, but thank you for your conversation. Walter, please stay in the chat and keep hanging out. And you're welcome to come up and talk to us anytime. Nice to see you, Captain Skeleton Man.
Peace be with you guys. Thank you for having me up. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Can you hear? You can hear me? Okay.
Okay. Let's give BBN the next question though, because I feel like I'm being a little remiss towards BBN now. BBN, anything you want to ask? BBN, you there, bro? Okay. Well, anyone can ask me any questions. Any other lingering questions as we head into our final few minutes? Oh, I think we lost BBN.
Yeah, I have some things I want to ask.
Yeah, feel free.
So I was raised, I'll give you a little background. I was raised in Roman Catholicism. Then as I got older, I kind of left religion altogether. And then I got back involved in it. Now I'm going almost 50 years old right now. I got back involved in it. And actually for the past 40 years, I've been studying linguistics on pretty much all the holy books that people call holy books in every religion. And I hear in Christianity different, theological ideologies that they come up with. And then I actually critique those things and look at the linguistics of it. So a lot of Christians believe that Jesus is God. Are you one of those in that sense?
So for me, myself, I sort of hold everything in different degrees of calibrated uncertainty. So my belief that I was an atheist for almost all my adult life. I would say I kind of moved towards theism maybe about 2.5 years ago. I'm still about maybe 55% sure that there is a God. But I think if there is a God, then it's very, very likely that a Christian theology is true. Okay. I don't really go too far beyond that in these conversations. And the reason why is because I think you kind of have to walk before you can run. But what I'm more certain about, I'm about 85% sure, is that if there is any religion that's true, then it's a religion based on Jesus. And that I would say I'm about 85% certain of. And that's because of my comparative theological framework argument, which looks at the events behind each religion's inception from an academic historiographical lens, and I look at these religions comparatively. Now, sometimes people will say, well, do you think Jesus was God, or was Jesus the Son of God? And that's, I tend to lean towards monarchical Trinitarianism, but it's not something that I usually get into on this channel. And the reason why is because I think you sort of first have to say, is this book divinely inspired? And then some people have even gotten really granular with me and said, like, well, what percent do you think Jesus was divine? Or do you think he was fully divine or partially divine? And I'm like, if you gave me a book and you said the person who wrote this book is 5% divine, then I would say, wow, that as a former atheist, that blows my mind. I'm going to read that book. I'm going to learn everything that's in the book. So to me, it doesn't really make it that much more compelling if somebody's 5% divine versus 100% divine. And the reason is because I am 0% divine. I don't know if that kind of helps you with a lens of where I'm coming from. The other reason I don't get into it is because it just, from a strictly mathematical perspective, I think you kind of have to learn long division before you learn calculus, right? And that's I kind of think like I'm at that level where I'm learning the long division of Christian theology. I'm not at that level where I want to like go into like kenosis and a lot of other stuff. But
well,
go ahead.
I understand what you're saying, but I would disagree in the sense that no, we're all divine. So if you have life itself within you, that makes you divine. Human beings are all divine. We have a consciousness that's beyond the animalistic, and we are more aware of God than, animals and plants. So I would say that, we are all divine. My question is Jesus God? Because in my studies, I go to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 and John 3:16, and I see a great distinction between the Son of God and the Son of Man. A child is born and then a son is given. So I believe the son is a spirit and there's a vessel that it inhabits. And this vessel it inhabits has been from the beginning of time, because that's what image we are made in. That's why we look the way we look. However, this image is not God. It's a vessel of flesh. Flesh is meaningless, spirit gives life. So that's just one aspect of why I left religion. I don't leave the word of God. I leave the man-formed religion. And when you said you were an atheist before, one of the reasons I had become an atheist in my 20s is because religion, in my view of it, there was a lot of hocus pocus, weird things that were being taught that completely go against just nature itself and the natural order of things of physics. In my recent studies, however, I come to a different conclusion that it's not the word that was wrong. It's the interpretations that religions have created based on a form called the Codex. Are you aware of the Codex?
Well, codex means book.
So there's two main codexes that all scholars and academic people have to look at in order to critique or come up with interpretations of, for instance, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The originals don't exist. The only thing you have now is a codex.
May I interrupt real quick?
Yeah, I mean, let me, because we're kind of hopscotching around a lot of different things. This is probably where most Christians on the panel might give me a little bit of pushback, but I actually don't think we are, quote unquote, more divine than animals. Like to me, bonobos have a society. Bonobos have a sense of morality. I've known dogs who are very, very. I've never had a pet dog. I've always wanted one, but I feel like I've known animals who have relationships. They have love in their hearts.
Yeah.
Am I more divine than a bonobo? Am I more divine than a dog, or am I just kind of have better language skills? Like
I would look at it as what is God. The actual word Elohim in the beginning, the Hebrew word Elohim, means 7 spirits, and those 7 spirits include life itself, and then counsel, knowledge, understanding, wisdom, power, and fear of the Lord. In nature, we all contain different amounts of that spirit of God poured onto us. So yes, I understand dogs and cats and these things have a form of life and divineness to them, but we as human beings, we contain more of the essence of those 7 than all creation. Does that make sense to you? And what I'm saying, Christians don't understand it, because this is something that I've studied in my studies. That's why I say the Son of God is our God. He created us. Through him, he created us. His God is the Father. And that's why he says, I came to show you the one and true God, which is his God. He's the only begotten. But a lot of people will put those two things together and think that the Father is our God in the sense, but it says the Lord is our God and the Lord is the Son.
Can I ask a question? You started this off by saying religions teach you hocus pocus and they conflict with the sciences. What is an idea in Christianity or Christology that contradicts the sciences?
Trinity, the Trinity aspect. So they'll have Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And then my studies, I looked at the Torah, the beginning, and in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2 and 3, it actually gives you the actual true Trinity, because when you look at genetics of human beings in nature, we are made male, female, and then a child is born. So we're made in the image and likeness of God. And in their Trinity, it's all a masculine Trinity. They have no feminine there. But the Torah states the Ruach, which is the masculine, and then the Mayim, which is the water. So the spirit moves across the water. Now, this is just one spirit. There's 6, there's 7, but life itself is the thing moving across the water, which is feminine. And then the begotten light is created. So in the essence of the actual Trinity is Father, Mother, and Child, or Spirit, Mayim, light.
I mean, but I guess I just going back to the question, what is it that Christianity teaches that's antithetical to the sciences? Because that's what you started with. You said,
well, because in your Trinity, you can't have 2 daddies and the Son. That's illogical. We can't make that in human being life. 2 fathers cannot produce an offspring. 2 women could not produce an offspring. Therefore, if you leave out the divinity and the truth of God, then that takes away from what is in nature real.
Well, I guess to me, though, I don't hear like a scientific rule that you're saying Christianity goes against.
I just gave you how many Father, Son, only the Father is holy. And if you look at what the Holy Spirit is called as HaKodesh, that is the Son of God already. So either you have 2 sons and 1 father, or you have 2 fathers and 1 son. Where's the feminine?
Well, I mean, I agree with you that the feminine is underemphasized, but that's why I always, when I talk about God the Father, I usually, in my books, often when I talk on this channel, I talk about God the parent figure, because I think using God the Father is unnecessarily masculinizing. Now, that's an artifact of translation between different languages. There are some languages that are more genderly compressive, and in other words, there's sort of gender lossiness that happens in varying languages that doesn't happen in every language, right? Some languages, including Hebrew, are really meant to contain some nouns in neither a masculine nor a feminine form. So yeah, we do think of God the Father. I don't think it's biblically incorrect to talk about God the Parent. And maybe somebody on the channel wants to say like, no, you're way off, Tavo, and I'll happily listen to that. And maybe I should open it up to some other people. I'm sure some other. Good to see you, Dr. Kurt. Nice to see Kelly. Nice to see you as well. And it's nice to see everybody else. This is going to be a longer, more interesting conversation. So I probably won't. I have a hard out at 2 hours and 30 minutes. So what I'm going to do is probably just let the conversation keep going off the stream, and then Captain Skeleton Man hopefully will come back and we'll have a conversation in front of everybody. But I know that. And Kefas says, please subscribe to the channel. I would agree with that. We're getting really close to 1,000 subscribers. We're right at 909 as of this moment. So if you haven't subscribed already, I'd really love that. So we only have about 5 or 6 minutes left. I just want to remind everyone that I do go live every Monday, 5 p.m. PST. So you're always welcome to be here. And I also want to remind you all that I've had some really great conversations with many of you today, some of which have been incomplete. But if you ever want to message me, I'm happy to have a real dedicated conversation with any of you, including all the people on the channel and the people in the chat. So you can email me your questions, or you can schedule some time if you want to chat with me more about this stuff. So we only have 6 minutes left, or 5 minutes right now, but I'll turn it back over to Captain Skeleton Man. I'll let some other people chime in. And if the conversation goes long, I'll just take it off the stream and end the stream, but they can all keep talking after we get off. And then hopefully we'll recap some of that for in a future conversation. All right, go ahead. Go ahead, everybody. Odin, Faith from Facts, you want to say anything you want to say?
So I'm Faith from Facts. I occasionally do ad hoc stuff on my channel. Yeah. So.
But I mean, anything you want to say in response to Captain Skeleton Man? And Max, you're welcome.
Oh, so I think the problem I'm seeing with his argument that there has to be this you can't do the masculine and a child is that we're not talking about a biological process for begetting.
Well, but however, if we are made in his image, see, you can't bring God into our image and likeness. It states we're made in his image and likeness, male and female. He created us for that reason. So if as a man, when I create a theology, and I leave out in my theology the feminine, then I have a fallacy that's happening there.
So I don't really think that follows. And when we talk about the image of God, I think there's one very important thing that I think a lot of people miss. So we know about the ark as ancient ritual furniture, and between the cherubim wings, there should be an idol. Okay, if it was an ark as kind of the Egyptians would know it. Okay, but that space where a physical idol is supposed to be is empty. Right? But God still dwells there. Okay. And so because of that, I think that when we think of the image of God, we also need to think of something that's not visible, like biology or gender or whatnot, but what is invisible. So,
well, there again, I go back to when Christians state Jesus is God, he's the Son of God. That's an image. So there is an image. When Moses received the commandments, I'm pretty sure Christians don't know this. Moses went into a cave where a man was there that gave him those 10 commandments. Are you aware of that? It's literally in Genesis. But Christians don't look at it in that manner. They think it's a Charlton Heston film. So Moses is speaking to God face to face. Therefore, the Son has to be our God, not the Father. The Father is the only thing the Father created was his Son, the only begotten.
I'm gonna
so there's that separation.
We're right up on 2 hours 30 minutes, and I just don't have that much time left. So I'm gonna end the stream, but we can keep talking. I'd love that.
Yeah. I put a link to my studio in the chat.
Hope you all have a really wonderful day.
So